Security Watch on Now Breakfast.
Welcome to Security Watch on Now Breakfast. This morning, the Corps Marshal of the Federal Road Safety Corps, Dauda Biu, has instructed personnel to impound vehicles carrying humans and animals together. His instruction comes after 18 people died in a crash involving an articulated vehicle on the Abuja-Kaduna highway yesterday. 27 other passengers sustained injuries when the driver of the vehicle, which was overloaded with goods and humans, lost control and fell into a ditch. The Corps Marshal has asked for the courts to prosecute the drivers.
Also on Security Watch, 10 persons have been arrested for allegedly vandalizing the towers and lines of the Transmission Company of Nigeria (TCN) in Edo, Delta, Ondo and Ekiti states. TCN Benin Regional General Manager Engineer Isaac Okpe said people deliberately cut lines, causing the towers to collapse. He also referenced an April incident when persons were arrested while attempting to cut a 330 kV feeder. Although Engineer Okpe did not reveal the number of people, he said they were arrested before proper damage could be done. And that's Security Watch this morning, but stay with us, there are more conversations on the way.
Good morning. This is your daily Security Watch on Now Breakfast.
Stay tuned to your Beyond the News station daily for our up-to-the-minute compact news bulletins from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., 4 p.m. and 6 p.m., bringing you a wide range of local and international news from our news desk. Stay informed, stay updated on Radio Now 95.3 FM.
You're listening to Now Breakfast. From the north to the south, real people.
So like I said to you, it's some serious elements of the outgone and official of my party whose tenure elapsed, who are pleading with me to endorse an illegal extension, and I refuse to be a part of any illegality.
Real stories every morning.
Most of the IDP, they stay in schools, and once they move in schools, when there is a disaster, the school in that area is automatically shut down.
This is Today in the News on Now Breakfast.
Today in the news, the federal government has exempted imported liquefied petroleum gas, also known as cooking gas, from customs duties and value-added tax. This effectively means gas should be cheaper than it is at the moment. In recent times, the price of cooking gas has been increasing month on month, with the National Bureau of Statistics putting the average price of 5 kilogram gas around 4,560 naira in October. Other items exempted by the federal government include LPG cylinders, LPD cascades, gas leak detectors, steel pipes, gas generators, and others. Felix Ekundayo is the president of the Nigeria Liquefied Petroleum Gas Association, and he joins us this morning to discuss what this means for the industry. Mr. Ekundayo, let's start with your reaction to the government's move.
Good morning. My apologies in advance for my voice. I have a cold at the moment.
That's all right.
We think it's, from the NLPD's perspective, it's a great move in terms of the items selected for, how should we say, these reliefs. So especially the product itself, which brings some kind of reduction, although moderate, but it brings some kind of reduction to the current prices. Mm-hmm. I will go so far as to say that the main reason for the rises so far are actually more to do with the foreign exchange rate than with taxes or duties.
So if I may, Mr. Ekundayo, are you essentially saying that despite this move, we could still see the cost of gas increase, whatever that cost may be? You said it was moderate, so maybe you can give us a sense of what moderate means and then tell us whether this moderate will still see increases based on what you've just mentioned.
Okay, so to contextualize this, the price of almost all commodities is not just gas, so I don't like to focus on gas. The price of almost all commodities, fish, rice, dairy, all of that has gone up significantly by more than double. Now, if we have a situation situation where relief is provided on VAT and other levies, they come to a maximum of 10%, sake of argument, where the price itself has probably gone up by 50 to 80%. So the 10% is relief in itself, yes, but that's why I contextualize it and say it's moderate. I'm not now going to, or I wouldn't be quoted as saying this will provide 100% relief of the prices or the price rises that have occurred of late. Most of that has been due to the rise in foreign exchange. And there is actually information that we put out in this to show the international prices, which haven't risen that high, but the deterioration in foreign exchange has made the local prices a lot higher.
Right. Mr. Ekundayo, do suppliers get priority in terms of accessing foreign exchange from the central bank or the formal system?
That is not the case. Unfortunately, that is not the case. And I'm not here advocating for a special foreign exchange regime for the industry. But that's definitely not the case.
But would you at least, well, maybe not a special foreign exchange rate, but just the ability to access it based on priority, would that ease the troubles?
Yes, certainly. I'm not going to deny it if it were available. What we do know is that it's been extremely challenging for almost every industry. So that's why I'm saying that it's not something we will be pursuing actively. Because it's been very, very challenging and difficult for almost every other sector of the economy. What we are advocating as a way to making sure that we reduce the prices is to divert more of local production into the economy. We still have two other major producers that export gas, and we are working to see how those can be brought in.
Right. Well, it's so this particular move by the federal government sees certain parts of the value chain removed from custom duties and value-added tax. If local production is ramped up, will we see a drop in prices of cooking gas in the coming months of 2024?
Yes, of course. As with any commodity, the more you produce locally, the lower the prices are locally. So at the moment, we're having to augment with imported LPG, and that's where the higher prices will tend to reflect on the local market here. So if we can divert more of the production, so NLNG already diverts all of its production to the local market, but we have two other producers that can and should adopt a similar policy. Now, if that happens, then we will end up with a lot more material in the local market, which will have a bigger impact in driving down prices.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ekundayo. Our guest this morning is the president of the Nigeria Liquefied Petroleum Gas Association, Mr. Felix Ekundayo.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
International rights group Amnesty International says the Tinubu administration has not made any progress in human rights so far. Amnesty's country director Issa Sanusi highlighted the government's failure to investigate past human rights violations and its inadequate response to ongoing abuses. He also criticized the government's reliance on issuing statements in response to such situations, describing the act as a mere echo of the previous administration's ineffective approach. For more on this, we're joined by Obo Oboko Roland. Mr. Roland is a human rights lawyer. Good morning and welcome to the conversation, Mr. Roland.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure to have you on. Let's start off with your reaction to this statement by Amnesty International. They say that this administration is relying heavily on issuing statements and it's nothing but an echo of the previous administration's ineffective approach. What's your take on this?
I'm in tandem with the position of Amnesty International because it is yours to the blind. It is visible to the blind and audible to the deaf that there has been a lot of human rights abuses in the country since the inception of this administration, even though they are just barely 6 months in office. If you look at the country very well, on the length and breadth of the country, there are a lot of human rights abuses. For instance, if you look at the revelation by Senator Adams Aliyu Shomole just about 3 or 4 days ago, wherein animals are being taken care of more than inmates in their custody. So it is not a far-fetched position that there are a lot of human rights abuses in the country. Another example I can give you, look at what happened in Kaduna about 3, 4, 5 days ago also, wherein Navy or Army, as they call themselves, embarked on an airstrike. How do you reconcile that? There are a lot of persons, innocent persons who are languishing in prisons. There are a lot of persons who are languishing in police custody. There are a lot of persons who are languishing in various detention facilities in the country. So I'm in touch with the position of Amnesty International as we speak.
Right.
That is my position on that.
Mr. Rowland, beyond issuing statements, what else should the administration be doing?
First and foremost, I will urge the federal government of Nigeria to adhere strictly to the provisions of the Constitution, because the Constitution is clear as to how and when a citizen can be arrested. You can't be arresting people in trust. For instance, look at one of the ways I will urge the federal government to adhere to human rights
Abuses
is that, one, when court orders are made, they should adhere strictly to that court order. A situation where the executive feel they are more powerful than every other arm of government is uncalled for. There will be anarchy in society if orders of court are not respected. The provisions of the Constitution, because the Constitution is supreme. Federal government, executive government, state actors, non-state actors, these days, they don't adhere strictly to the provisions of the Constitution. Now, Nigeria is a signatory to so many international instruments. So I will urge the federal government and state actors, non-state actors, to adhere strictly to the provisions of these international instruments. Our local laws.
Mr. Rowland, I can't help but ask about the National Human Rights Commission and their role in ensuring or encouraging or supporting this administration to do better. How would you gauge what they've been doing so far, their performance so far?
Yes, I think I will commend the Amnesty International and other international agencies who are keen in promoting rule of law, human rights, promoting human rights in the world, by extension, Nigeria. So I will equally urge them, if there is a way, they should also encourage some NGO who are into, who are promoting who are promoting human rights in Nigeria, by giving them some grants, by giving them aids, in order to encourage them, organize symposium, organize seminars, so that persons who are interested, lawyers, non-lawyers, who are interested in ensuring that human rights are not abused or promoted in the country, then I think I will urge them to do so.
Right. Mr. Rowland, what about human rights support at the subnational level?
Yes. Same. My position on what I earlier stated should also go for the subnational level, because there is no rule of law or human rights anywhere is human rights anywhere, whether US, America, subnational, and so on. We just want people to follow rule of law. You understand? People should just follow rule of law. Once you follow rule of law, there will not be abuse of human rights. One agency cannot promote itself over and above any other organs of government. Everybody should be equal before the law. You understand? That is my position.
Well,
everybody should be equal before the law. Some persons cannot say, oh, I enjoy immunity and hide under the guise of immunity and begin to abuse human rights. So that is my position on that.
I mean, Mr. Rowland, your positions, it coincides with the theme for this year's, World Human Rights Day, which is freedom, equality, and justice for all. We want to say a big thank you to you for your thoughts on this conversation, and we appreciate your time. Our guest, Mr. Obo Oboko Rowland, is a human rights lawyer who's just joined us to discuss Amnesty International's criticism of the Tinubu administration and their approach to human rights.
You're listening to Now Breakfast.
Moody's Investors Service, a US-based credit rating agency, has moved Nigeria's credit outlook from stable to positive. According to Moody's, the change is due to a possible reversal of the deterioration in Nigeria's fiscal and external position as a result of economic reforms by the Tinubu administration. Despite the positive change, the agency warns that the reform efforts may not be enough to improve Nigeria's credit profile. To get a better understanding of what this means, we are joined this morning by Oluwasanmi Akosile, a research and strategy analyst at Greenwich Merchant Bank. Mr. Akosile, good morning and thank you for joining us on the conversation. What exactly is...
Our apologies, Mr. Akosile is not on the line just yet. Hopefully we can reach him in just a moment. Our sincerest apologies. But looking into this new rating by Moody's, there's a lot of conversation around how it's a positive outlook. Right, it is, again, just as was said earlier, a reflection of the economic reforms that the current administration has undertaken. But as you know, these are reforms that have been criticized, not the carrying out of the reforms themselves, but the slow pace in terms of just following up with the needed actions to shore up the decisions.
Right. Mr. Akosile has joined us. Mr. Akosile, good morning. Thank you for joining us on the conversation. Let's start with, what exactly does this new rating mean for Nigeria?
Okay, good morning. Thank you for having me. So just to put some context to this, right, I'm sure you must have given the introduction about Moody's recent outlook upgrade. However, it is important to lay emphasis on the fact that it was not the credit rating that was upgraded, it was just the economic outlook that was upgraded from stable to positive, while our credit rating still remains for Moody's still remains at AAA1, which is still very much in the non-investment grade level of what you would also call the junk grade levels. What this simply means is we are still very much in the same position, no credit rating upgrade yet. However, the outlook just gives the incline that, on the back of current reforms that have been enacted by the present government, Nigeria is positioned to witness a reversal in the economic deterioration that we've seen, particularly with the previous administration, and particularly their concerns really have been with respect to the worsening fiscal situations and external positions. If you go through their statements, it was categorically stated that the movement from stable to positive indicates that Nigeria is positioned to witness a reversal with respect to fiscal and external positions. And you would recall that it was sometime early this year, I think in January, that Moody's downgraded us from, I think, B3 to C current upgrade, and that's what they've maintained. And in the last between 2021 and 2023, Nigeria witnessed a number of downgrades, and basically that was on the back of the worsening fiscal situations, rising debt profile, debt sustainability metrics that were really very unimpressive with respect to budget performance, revenue underperformance, the very steep decline in FX reserves, debt service revenue ratio, that kept worsening. I think last year we recorded almost 90%, and previous year, almost 90% too. So those were the factors, that.
So, Mr. Akosile, apologies. Let me interrupt you for a moment. So, you started off talking about how this, if you like, this improvement is it's a forecast essentially. If we're able to sustain what we've done so far, then we're likely going to see the rating itself increase to positive, right? That then makes me wonder, if the outlook does look positive, do you think that it will encourage investors to come in a lot sooner?
Okay, yeah. So, I would say it's a positive one, right? Particularly looking at the critical reforms, right, that current administration enacted when they came into government. Chief being the removal of fuel subsidy, which in the short to medium term, the painful economic situations would erupt, and we're already facing that with respect to inflationary pressures. We've also seen the collapse of multiple FX windows. So those were the two major reforms that I mentioned there, and it's really not far-fetched looking at the positivity that should erupt from those policies, right, with respect to fiscal situations and my external position. So I would say the outlook is positive. However, there is usually a lag period between when economic policies are enacted and when we see the fruition, especially with respect to economic performance and how economic indices now begin to reflect that positivity. So I would say the onus now lies on the government to make sure that these policies are well implemented, and the follow-up policies or the implementation should go well. It's no brainer that we have brilliant policies that comes up with governments coming in and coming out. However, the major fault has been with proper implementation. So if we see, obviously investors would be on the sidelines, so obviously monitoring these reports. I mean, these are international credit rating agencies, and sometimes last month, Fitch also did the same thing, maintained same rating, but improved outlook. Also S&P, I think in August did the same thing, maintained rating, and gave same positive outlook. So just like the way they are positive, obviously we in the local space are also very positive with respect to what should come forth, particularly going into next year. And we can just keep our fingers crossed and hope that implementation goes well, and follow-through policies would be in alignment with reforms that have already been enacted.
Thank you very much for speaking to us this morning, Mr. Akosile. Our guest, Oluwasanmi Akosile, was speaking to us about Moody Investors Service moving Nigeria's credit outlook from the stable to the positive.
In just a few minutes, News Extra comes your way, and we're taking a look at the presidential elections unfolding in Egypt at the moment. Stick around. This is Now Breakfast.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
The Financial Services Regulation Coordinating Committee, FSRCC, in collaboration with the National Broadcasting Commission, NBC, wishes to draw the attention of the public to the activities of illegal financial operators, IFOs, which threaten public trust and the stability of the Nigerian financial system. The general public is hereby advised to refrain from dealing with unlicensed financial operators who deceive individuals with unrealistically high investment returns. Verify the licensing status of such schemes on this website: www.cbn.gov.ng, www.nicom.gov.ng, www.pencom.gov.ng, www.sec.gov.ng. To report any suspicions of illicit financial activities, call 0700 225 5226, 0800 225 5226, or +234 817 665 6273. Announcer, FSRCC.
For top-notch analysis, friendly banter from basketball.
To use it, Curry, way downtown, bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot!
to football.
Gomez, Jordi Alba, Lionel Messi! Oh my goodness! Lionel Messi!
To tennis.
Simona Halep is the Wimbledon champion.
To Formula One.
Destiny of the championship as Sebastian Vettel wins the British Grand Prix and leads home Lewis.
Join Nira Adesoya and the rest of the crew on Now Sport every weekday at 6:10 p.m. Let's go.
In order to keep up with our culture of excellence and continue to bring you the very best of radio programming, we invite you, our dear esteemed listener, to share your concerns with us on any of our content and or broadcast practices that you consider unsatisfactory. You can reach us via WhatsApp on 0809 682 2595. That is 0809 682 2595. This is for us to get your feedback on our efforts to continue to build and maintain our relationship with you and also to serve you better. Thank you for choosing Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations. You're listening to Now Breakfast. For every news story, there's more.
So we can write the best security architecture plan, but it remains an essay until it becomes manifest on ground.
More detail.
Every time you are doing reform, even when we were doing it 2006, 2007, the question is also that it's not the right time. When will be the right time?
More than just the headline. This is News Extra on Radio Now 95.3 FM.
Voting will continue in Egypt today as eligible voters take to the polls to elect a president who will govern for the next 6 years. Sitting President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi is on the ballot seeking a third term. His primary challengers are Farid Zaran of the Egyptian Social Democratic Party, Abdel Sanad Yamama from the Wafi Party, and Hazim Omar from the Republican People's Party. Egypt, Africa's second largest economy, is battling high inflation, rising cost of food and security threats on all sides, with the most recent being in Gaza. To discuss polity post and after elections in Egypt, Radio Now's Nabila Usman had a conversation with Hadil El-Sharif, an Egyptian journalist and BNN Breaking Middle East correspondent. Ms. El-Sharif starts by giving a sense of the situation on the ground.
Since the beginning of this morning, a lot of people went to the election, unlike what most analysts predicted, that there will be lower turnover. But as I can see now, there are a lot of people. There have been huge invitations from the governments on its screens and radio stations that may push some to participate. I don't know, but since the beginning of the first day, many citizens lined up in front of the committees in several Egyptian governorates, even before the opening of the committees. But whether this will continue or not, we don't know until the third and final day of the elections.
So I understand that voter turnout in the last two election cycles have been low, less than 50%, the highest being the 2014 one, where it was about 47%.
Yes, correct.
And I understand that as of 2018, there was a law that was supposed to fine Egyptians about 500 Egyptian pounds that's eligible voters for not coming out to vote. Is this being used in any way to sort of encourage citizens to come out to the polls in greater numbers as the days unfold?
To be honest, the security situation in the bordering countries around Egypt, such as Libya, Sudan, and Israel right now, making citizens cling to military rule for fear of the wars surrounding us. So maybe this pushes them to go to the elections and to elect President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. So they fear of especially from Israel, there will be any near war, because Israel is now pushing Palestinians to Sinai, and when they reach Sinai, maybe there will be some military actions there. So I guess people right now are afraid of that, so they will cling to President Sisi because they may feel safer as him as the ruler of Egypt right now. I don't think that there are names on the table that can compete with President Sisi now. There are no competent politicians who can get the citizens' trust to elect them. But the existence of three names is a new thing, right? In this election, previous elections, there was only one rival in front of President Sisi, and he wasn't conducting any elections campaigns, which led people to think that it's not real. But now the three candidates have done advertising and election campaigns unlike the previous time. So this may let people think that this time may be real, and they will like to participate.
I'd like to discuss what are the factors that will shape this election. A lot of opinion pieces have put the economy at the very top. Can you speak to us about that and the other things besides security which you mentioned?
Okay, the economic situation, as you said, yes, it's not the best. The economic situation in the whole world now is not at its best since Corona pandemic. But to be honest, the security situation, it's the thing that may scare Egyptians now more than the economic situation. President Sisi is also trying to fix the economic situation a little by increasing salaries, lowering commodity prices, and paying attention to doing more projects to increase job opportunities for youth. That may make people feel like he is the best for this critical period.
I understand that there is a $3 billion IMF loan that's somewhere in the works. And of course, with the IMF, there are typically conditions that come with loans. There are conversations that Egypt might see austerity measures imposed as early as next year. So within the first quarter of next year or so. How is that impacting citizens' confidence?
I admit that the economic situation right now, it's like the wars, the price of dollar and the black markets, it's way more different than what is the official number. The official number is about £30 and the black market is £50. And a country like Egypt, we depend on importing stuff that we use dollar. We need dollar. US dollars, of course. So that makes the situation very dangerous on citizens, especially because the prices are getting really, really high that doesn't comply with their salaries. But as I said, they may be concerned more about the security situation. What we are seeing now in Gaza is making us very scared because it's not stopping. It's keep going, and it's really close to us. If Palestinians came to Sinai, what will happen? Israel may conduct airstrikes on Sinai or something, and something like this as Egypt will never be quiet about. You know what I mean? So this will lead to a war or something between us and Israel and instability in the whole region. And we already have war in South and in Sudan. There is another genocide. So I know that the economic situation is really bad, but the security situation, that's what, as I asked many of Egyptians earlier, they all afraid of the security situation. The war in Gaza turned the scales and made a lot cling to the military rule more than before. If you know what I mean.
Yes, I do understand you. And I'm wondering how much of it has factored in President El-Sisi's campaign, because like you noted, along every side for Egypt, in Libya, there is essentially a breakdown of law and order. In Sudan, there's the civil war going on, and then the Rafah crossing. How is this shaping the campaign right now, leading up to the polls?
The weird thing that President Sisi didn't conduct any campaigns by himself. The director of his campaign made it, which is a little bit weird because we didn't see him on TV, on like public conferences. Like the first year he participated in the elections in 2013. We didn't see him. He didn't talk. We didn't see him at all. Some say that because he's busy with what's happening around us and the economic situation and the situation in Gaza and the situation in Sudan and stuff. So he's a little bit busy. But to be honest, that made the Egyptian like, so you are very confident of yourself that you didn't even have any TV interview, at least. Others candidates, they appeared on TV interviews and on radio and newspaper interviews and stuff, but he didn't.
This is a great part to talk about the other candidates, and the three that you mentioned, Abdel Sanad Yamama, Hazim Omar and Fareed Zahran. I know that as of October, we had Ahmed Tantawi dropping out of the race. And earlier you noted that none of these candidates necessarily poses a strong opposition to the president. So there are questions, why would they perhaps did not consider a coalition of sorts?
So every party have we have like the four parties, that's all we have. We can't consider them like opponents, you know what I mean. The real opponent was Ahmed Tantawi, and they said that he couldn't collect the necessary signatures from Egyptian citizens to participate. I can't. I don't know the exact numbers that he have, but it's a huge number. He couldn't have. That's why he dropped out of the. I don't know if this was the real situation or not, but he was a really opponent to President Sisi. Maybe the government didn't want him to participate in the election because of that, because they know that the other participants, Fareed Zahran, Hazim Omar and Abdel Sanad Yamama, they are not real components, if you know what I mean. Nobody knows them. We didn't hear about them until the ongoing election. So it's like it's guaranteed for President Sisi right now.
And yet there are criticisms that the president has essentially shrunk the civic space over the course of the last 8 years, his 2 tenures. There was the promise that he wouldn't run for a third term, but here we are again with him on the ballot and expected to be announced as the winner of the exercise. How has this sat with Egyptians?
Well, the political climate in Egypt, it's not the worst, but also it's not the best, to be honest, especially after the overthrow of the former president of Muslim Brotherhood, Mohammed Morsi. Muslim Brotherhood, as you know, it's a banned group in Egypt, and several Arab countries consider it a terrorist group. Many of the Muslim Brotherhoods are trying to disturb the political life in Egypt in an attempt, of course, to restore rule, but the government don't allow them to, so which make political life difficult to participate right now.
I understand that Egypt has a system that allows Egyptians in diaspora to vote at embassies in their host countries, and this happened from the 1st to the 3rd of December for this election cycle. All the things we've discussed right now, is there a different sentiment in previous years? Have you seen a different sentiment from Egyptians in the diaspora compared to Egyptians who are at home?
Egyptian abroad always participate. It's like it makes them feel they are home, like they miss home. That's so participating in events like election and stuff like that. They take it like, okay, we will go to our embassy, we will raise flags, and we will meet each other and meet other Egyptians abroad. So it's like an event for they're having fun, of course. But the most of them participate just because they want to feel home again. They want to feel they are part of their home country. So the turnover of Egyptian participated abroad, it was really high this year.
And that's News Extra today. That was Adil El Sharif, an Egyptian journalist and BNN Breaking Middle East correspondent, speaking to us on the presidential election in Egypt, where voting will close tomorrow, Tuesday the 12th of December. Up next is News Extra right here on Now Breakfast. Beg your pardon, News Review right here on Now Breakfast. Good morning.
Every second and every minute, something new happens. The news breaks.
People at a spot, and angry mob decided to bomb.
Everyone wants to share it, but not everyone wants to dig deep. Now that's where we come in. We bring you the news and go beyond with in-depth conversations and analysis with stakeholders.
I honestly think that the federal government on its own part has broken.
If voters or more people want to be part of that decision-making process, they need to be part.
GDP is not a good measure of development anyways. We are not there yet. We need to counter the narrative of the fact that their vote does not count. If their vote does not count.
We bring you the story within the story, and that's what makes us tick. We are Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos, and we go beyond the news.
This is Now Breakfast.
Grab a seat, pour a cup of coffee, and join the conversation on Now Breakfast. Let's go beyond the news. Let's talk facts.
First and foremost, the government will never kowtow to the threat of any group to give it conditions.
Let's discuss your opinion.
The politicians in Nigeria don't understand the principle of politics.
The day's biggest news stories.
IPOB has been covered in themselves in glory. There is nothing special about them. It's like a witch cried at night and the child died falling morning.
This is the News Review on Now Breakfast.
Welcome back. It's the News Review today, Monday the 11th of December, here on Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos. My name's Nabila Osman, here in the studio with
Stephen Imediegu. Good morning.
And our guest on the News Review this morning, as is usual, Radio Now's Camry Apollo joins us. Hi Camry, good morning.
Morning Nabila, morning Stephen. Good morning to our listener.
Yeah, now we can see who's exciting you this morning. It's all right. Stephen and I don't take any offense.
Not at all.
Let's talk about your weekend. What caught your attention?
The conference. Had a really interesting time. Very informative, I must say, attending the Amplify In-Depth Media Conference and Awards. It's an event put together by the Wole Soyinka Center for Investigative Journalism. So this was the third Amplify In-Depth Media Conference, and the theme centered on, basically, as is expected, our industry, but a critical part of our industry. That's our sustainability, the policies, media ownership, the use of technology, the advent of technology and what it's doing to journalism. All very interesting conversations. I'll be honest with you lot, I saw the lineup of speakers, 47, and I thought to myself, that's quite a bit. But every conversation was very relevant, as is to be expected when you have a gathering of intellectuals. I actually tried to assess the quality of knowledge present at that conference. When you start to look at the names and the years they have put into journalism, honestly, Stephen, Nabila, it won't be out of place for you to say there was about 3 to maybe 350 or 400 even years worth of journalistic experience in that room. We had people like, our host, first of all, the Wole Soyinka Center for Investigative Journalism, Motunrayo Alaka. She was obviously there, being the chief host. Dapo Olorinyomi, Uncle Daps, as we call him, the publisher and editor-in-chief of Premium Times. Also, people like Professor Ropo Shekoni, he's actually stepping down as the chairman of the Wole Soyinka Center. Larry Arogundade, Yusuf Ali, veteran investigative journalist. There were some conversations around investigative journalism. But what I found pretty interesting, this was set by the keynote address delivered by Uncle Daps. And that's the advent of AI and what it is doing to journalism. There are lots of interesting conversations there. And looking at the cross-section of attendees, as I said, there were ace broadcasters, some in their twilight years, and there were very young ones as well. So it was a robust conversation that was held. And when it got to AI, which I found pretty interesting, I can't name brands, of course, but there are all these AI tools that aid in writing and so on and so forth. The question was, how is it affecting journalism? Are you still practicing journalism if you resort to the use of some of these tools to write reports, for example, as opposed to, let's say, transcribing? Because AI, part of transcription is a part of AI. After all, we can't ignore that. It makes the job quicker. So the question is, how much journalism are you practicing journalism when you go to one of these chatbots, for example, and say, write me a report on, and then you list it, and then it knocks out the report? There are two schools of thought there. The younger generation there, the Gen Zs and so on and so forth, seem to think, well, if it's good information, we can use it. Yes, but what are these chatbots? The conversation moves to garbage in, garbage out, and then the very real needs. There are lots of people who call themselves journalists, but who are not practicing journalism. So the big question is, how much of journalism is lost when you resort to the use of technology? What are the fundamentals of journalism? Truth and accuracy, obviously, always going to be there. And, a chatbot, how accurate is a chatbot? It's only as accurate as what is already out there in the domain. I don't think we've gotten to the level where AI will start to think for itself. It will just aggregate a lot of information relevant to whatever question you put to it and give you what it considers to be relevant material. Scale of relevance differing from, I guess, maybe app to Apple platform. But again, it's very interesting. But another key part of the conversation was the sustainability of the media. Yeah. Now, Yusuf Ali said something interesting. And he was talking about the correlation between the state of the economy and the independence of journalism. Now, in countries like ours, you can't ignore that sort of thing because there is a connection. We have this saying, I don't agree with it, but I will say it anyhow, that a hungry man is whatever you choose to add on the end of it. Most will say a hungry man is an angry man. A hungry man cannot think. A hungry man cannot vote. My position is this, guys. If you say a hungry man cannot think for himself and will do whatever he's told, you are right. If you say a hungry man is independent and will do what he feels he needs to do, guess what? You're also right. It's going to be up to you. We need to stop coming up with all these excuses.
So, look, Cameron, let me take you back a moment. A few things have popped up for me from what you said. I can't help but think about what is a regular criticism of Nigerian audiences of the media, right? Oh, you journalists, what are you doing? Go and investigate. So Nigerian citizens seem to want investigative journalism quite a bit, but I hold a personal opinion that I don't think that we are a citizenry that are deserving of investigative journalism, mostly because for the society, for the country, the whole point of it is that it will spur some change, especially citizen-led change, right? So demand for accountability, demand to do XYZ. The most recent and far-reaching one that we saw was the Sweet Sweet Codeine documentary that Rona Meyer did with the BBC, which earned her a Grammy nomination, right? So that happened, and we saw the government move and ban a certain cough syrup from the market. But since then, up until now, and even before then, we know that there have been countless investigative pieces that have done nothing besides ending up on the streets of Twitter.
What you say is very, very true. And I was trying to get in the comments. I think somebody touched on this very thing. I think one of the co-hosts, Kimberly, works in a radio station in Abuja, Kimberly Wanchukwu, and she said she's been constantly accused of not being an investigative journalism. This is somebody who's won the awards herself, the Wole Soyinka Prize for Investigative Journalism. There's this belief that, well, I do agree with her. We need to see more radio because we are the front voice of this broadcasting thing regarding conversations with the people. There are more interactive conversations on radio than there are on television. So I would like to see more journalists assume the roles of presenter, because they're not always the same thing. As I tell people, a presenter is a presenter. Not every presenter is a journalist, but we need to see more journalists presenting these programs and holding and anchoring conversations with people. I do agree with you in that regard. Now, here's the thing as well. I wanted to get in the statement, but unfortunately, I was denied. Thankfully, we have a microphone here in Lagos, and that is the fact that, well, not the fact, I should say, I hold the opinion that the efficacy of investigative journalism is hinged on citizens' action, because the media can only do what the media can do. When we find out what's going on, and we make it public knowledge. It's now left to civil society, it's left to the citizenry to demand something is done of the government. That's how it works. Going to discover that somebody has done something or fallen short of the law, broken the law or done something bad, going to find that out and telling people is one thing. If there are no consequences, then these things will continue because there are no deterrents and so on and so forth.
I see this as a tripod. The journalists on one side, civil society organizations on the other, and then the people who the information is fed to as the third side. But with a tripod, if only one leg is standing, what do you have? An imbalance. And I think that's what happens a lot of the time. The information is there, the people who are supposed to push and the people who are supposed to demand accountability in a lot of cases are absent. The news review continues on the other side of the headlines at 8. Do stay with us.
We are intentional about the stories we tell and the language we use in telling them.
Intentional about the people we speak to and why we speak to them.
Because here at Radio Now 95.3 FM, we aren't just telling any story.
We are telling your story.
And your story is all that matters.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
Across Nigeria, Africa, and the world, this is Radio Now News.
In the headlines this morning, first in local news, Lagos laws will be enforced to aid economic activities, protect investments. Works Minister says he inherited 1.5 trillion naira debt from Buhari's government. Stand against unconstitutional change of government, President Tinubu charges ECOWAS leaders. Kogi Assembly Complex renovated. Plenary resumes today, says Speaker. In business and economy, over 321,000 SMEs get $1.4 billion funding in 6 years, says World Bank. In showbiz and entertainment, late Mohbad bags 2 posthumous awards in Ghana. On the foreign scene, UN Security Council paralyzed over Gaza, says Guterres. And in sports, Granada versus Athletic match abandoned after fan dies in stands. These are your 8 a.m. headlines here on Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos. I am Nabila Usman. Thank you for listening. The news review continues shortly. Do stay tuned.
This is Radio Now News.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
This is Now Breakfast.
Grab a seat, pour a cup of coffee, and join the conversation on Now Breakfast. Let's go beyond the news. Let's talk facts.
First and foremost, the government will never kowtow to the threat of any group to give it conditions.
Let's discuss discuss your opinion.
The politicians in Nigeria don't understand the principle of politics.
The day's biggest news stories.
IPOB have been covered in themselves in glory. There is nothing special about them. It's like a witch cried at night and the child died falling money.
This is the news review on Now Breakfast.
Welcome back into it. It is the news review on Now Breakfast. My name is Stephen Imediegu, here with
Nabila Usman.
And Radio Now's Camry Apollo joins us. The Monday Man is here. Camry was telling us about what the things caught his attention over the course of the weekend. Would also like to hear yours as well. And the phone numbers are 0913 5000 953 as well as 0901 111 1953. But to carry on the conversation with the news review, we take a look at the dailies, starting with the Guardian newspapers that has the bold headline, Asset Declaration. On page 6, 6 months on, Tinubu's net worth unknown, CSO's kick. This particular story goes on to show a pictorial of the net worth of some of Nigeria's past presidents, starting from the late President Musa Yar'Adua to the most recent former President Muhammadu Buhari. Talks about their net worth as well as some of the assets that they own. Well, it's not just President Bola Ahmed Tinubu whose assets are unknown. Former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan's assets were kept secret. Well, they were known, but they were kept secret. Camry, what is your reaction to this headline?
My reaction is, first of all, I'm not the Monday Man. Secondly, look, the assets declaration, what does the law require? The law requires the public official to file, with the Code of Conduct Bureau, their assets declaration forms, including that of their spouses, I believe it is. The law doesn't say it must be made public. This is number one. Number two, looking at what the other past presidents, those who had, looking at what they declared, the question I would ask is, it's about the verification, isn't it? I could tell you I've got this, that, the other, but it's all down to how good your verification is. That's another different conversation. But coming now forwards to President Tinubu, who is the president? What is the presidency and the presidents? Because to me, they are one and the same, okay? In this regard, the president of a country is a national symbol. The president of a country is an institution. That's who President Tinubu is. Right now, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Baba, I don't know what you guys want to call him, Jagaban, this, that, the other. Jagaban is on holiday. Right now, what we have is an institution known as President Tinubu. Taking it further, a president is meant to reflect the best of a people, to imbibe the best principles, best conduct, best character, and so on and so forth. That is the globally, psychologically expected, phenomenon we see when we look at a president. We expect to see someone that is, this is the best of them, and yes, this is a very, very sound and solid person / institution. That's how it's meant to work. So if you are going to occupy that office, then first things first, you need to start to lead by example. Now, we saw what happened in the United States of America. I'm not going to tie it down to this singular incident. President Trump and his taxes before office and the ruckus it caused. Before that, it really wasn't an issue because it was taken that these people were as good as their word. They would stand and do and then ask you to follow suit. That's what was expected, be they Republican, Democrat, didn't matter. It was about tradition. President Trump went off tangent with that particular tradition, and he's still kicking and fighting today. I think the matter's in court and so on and so forth. What has it done? It has caused it's caused a lot of people to look at the shining example. I use that word advisedly. The shining example of democracy that the rest of the world, the beacon of democracy that the rest of the world is meant to, try to copy. It's brought a crack into that sort of thing, hasn't it? Now, this is what happens when the occupant or aspirant to that highest office breaks with the tradition. These are some of the effects. So it's a very, very serious thing. We really shouldn't be having this conversation. President Tinubu ought to have simply followed tradition, filled out a form, submitted the form, and then we can talk.
Can you really call it tradition? Because of five presidents, with him being the fifth, right? Yes. Of five presidents, only 2 declared their assets, and for the sake for the sake of our listener, right, just to look at the infographic on the front page of The Guardian, starting off with President Olusegun Obasanjo, his assets were unknown in 1999 and as of 2007. President Yar'Adua took over and declared assets valued at 856.5 million naira, a yearly income of 18.7 million naira. That's how much he earned in a year. His wife was earning 19 million, or had 19 million naira. Then President Goodluck Jonathan, who kept his assets secret, and finally President Muhammadu Buhari declared less than 13 million naira in his bank accounts. Breakdown shows $150,000, 2 mud houses, livestock, an orchard, and a plot of land. Typically, they're supposed to also declare at the end of their tenure. And I know that just this previous administration, there was questions. I don't know what followed. I know that the VP did pick up the form to declare his assets at the end of the tenure, but I really don't remember seeing reporting on how much it was.
Exactly, Nabila. So again, the figures we have those figures because the people chose to make that information public. The Code of Conduct Bureau won't publicize these things unless you request them under the Freedom of Information Act. But President Yar'Adua, President Buhari, they made theirs public, these particular declarations. But you are quite right. At the end of his tenure, that's President Muhammadu Buhari. I'm not so sure he went to declare his assets and then we could do a plus and minus, because that's the whole point.
Yes.
Let's see your
what
journey.
Did you get? How much of it was legitimate? How much of it was undue influence? Whatever the case may be. But Camry, we'll turn your attention to one other story before we call out the phone lines once again. Front page of Daily Trust and The Guardian both have similar headlines around ECOWAS. The Daily Trust reads, ECOWAS reopens talks with Niger junta, demands short transition roadmap. And for The Guardian, ECOWAS team negotiates with Niger on return to civil rule. As we know, the heads of state are currently in a meeting. It started off yesterday, the 64th session. And President Tinubu, once again, is a big reason why the Nigerian attention on Niger is different from what it was under the administration of President Buhari. How far do you see these conversations going?
Not very far, really, because I think we are nearing the end of a definite position either way. I say this, I had a conversation with somebody who is quite experienced in these matters, and he actually put a timeline to it, which as journalists we know not to do, because unless you control all the pieces, don't go out on a limb. It could damage your reputation. But he was pretty confident. He said, look, in a couple of months, let's have this conversation again. And the reason is this. If you recall, as soon as the military takeover was announced and President Bazoum was taken into custody, one of the first things Nigeria did was to start to talk to the northern neighbors of Niger. The reason for that is Niger is a landlocked country. So I believe, I'm not sure, I believe President Tinubu had the benefit of some expert diplomatic advice and counsel from, we've got a lot of them, Professor Akinyemi and so on and so forth. So they must have told them, go and talk to the neighbors very quickly. Let's see where they stand, and that will determine what we ought to do. Because the whole concept was clearly a sanction was going to be in the offing at those early stages. Right. But for the sanction to be effective, it would take the countries literally shutting their borders to Niger and locking Niger in and let the sanctions do what they will. And that's what this gentleman told me. He said, look, it's a matter of sanctions. They'll turn the squeeze. Niger depends a lot on its neighbors, especially to the south. That's Nigeria, Benin Republic, and so on and so forth, for a lot of trade, commerce, and this, that, the other. Not to talk of the border it shares with Nigeria. So that's what we're starting to see. I think a few weeks ago, the military junta was complaining about the sanctions when the military, I forget his name, pardon me, went over to, is it Mali, to have a conversation with the leader.
Abdurrahman Chiani.
Chiani, thank you very much. Went over to have a conversation with the military leader in Mali, and they talked about the sanctions. So the sanctions are, doing what they will. Let's not forget this group. of military rulers in Niger at some point were doing a tour around. You saw a lot of youthful support from the population, because then the conversation was, let's kick out the colonialists. That's a different conversation. ECOWAS is more concerned with what it sees as a potential threat to democracy in the region, and that is the forceful takeover of government. And that's a different conversation. But the youth in that country, you can understand the French intervention there and so on and so forth. It's an emotional thing, isn't it? It's colonialism. So they were quick to tie themselves to that and give support to the military rulers.
Well, I don't know if I'll call it an emotional thing, but the phone numbers this morning, 0913 5000 953, 0901 111 1953. You can also send us a message on WhatsApp, 0809 682 2595. Let's get your thoughts on the news headlines this morning. Well, Camry, I hear you, and I run the risk of dragging this out longer than it should be. But is it possible that the youth are more concerned about a lack of the basic dividends of good governance in their countries? The view that it seems as though the government of the day is supporting colonial powers over nationalism. We'll come back to this in just a moment.
Hello, good morning. What's your name and where are you calling from?
This is Shagun calling you from Ikeja.
Hi, Shagun. Good morning and welcome. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, regarding the aspect of asset declaration, I think we're just supposed to look at it in narrow perspective. We need to broaden it. Especially, we need to extend it to not only president. Let's look at the governors, the senators, the House of Reps, so on like that. Because these are the people that also hold the office or offices. So they need to declare the houses. So that's the reason why there's no way they can checkmate them. There's no accountability because we only focus our attention more on president. And even the person that just told me, I know you have a lot of fortune. That's many things. But let's extend it to everyone. Let's take it to government, to senator, and to House of Reps. Let everyone, let them declare the house. And so that if they are coming next time, they will do it again. How much do you have? How did you come? How did you get it? How did you get it? So all these things, they need to be accountable for that. It's not only the
Thank you, Shagun. I appreciate it. Shagun saying that the matter of declaration of assets should be across the board and not just at the center, which it is, by the way. Hi, John. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, John.
Morning, John.
I think Nigeria has a consequence problem. Because even, I know we've had this issue or we've had this argument about morality in politics and all that. But if we continue to be a society where consequence is treated with kid gloves, then we'll continue to have political actors who will continue to put themselves in situations where they feel and possibly know that there is no repercussion to the actions or inactions they take. I mean, a government official who doesn't declare his assets before and after he leaves office should have some political consequence that comes his way in such a way that when such an action is taken or not taken, political careers should be threatened, if not ended. And so you begin to ask yourself, and thank you, Camry, for giving us the insight into the activities you are engaged in the investigative journalism.
It sounds like coded stuff.
Yes, but when you go through a program like that and you hear the names of the participants and you listen to the discourse, you can't but feel that there's a disconnect between the profession and the hearts and minds of Nigerians. To tell you the truth, globally speaking, I think journalism itself is under threat as a viable contributor to human development. I mean, a few years ago, print newspapers were threatened virtually out of operation by electronic means of getting the news. Now, radio, television are all being threatened by podcasts. And I say this because if you listen to several podcasts that are hinged on news or current affairs, people have an opportunity to speak their mind and not be hinged by certain gates or fences or nuances. And people are able to express themselves and contribute and really give a feel of what is happening. I mean, with all due respect to the people that attended that conference, Camry, there is a particular journalist in my mind that wasn't invited to that conference, who, in my own opinion, carried out one of the most far-reaching investigative journalism pieces on a presidential candidate in the last election. And his work was so accepted by people across the board. And he wasn't invited to that conference. And I don't think he was given any award or spoken of at that conference. I mean, I remember as a child, my dad and his brothers reading about the articles written by, or things written about Walter Cronkite about the Vietnam War. And later on, when I checked about Walter Cronkite, I saw that in the course of his career, he actually put down certain markers in journalism that helped the society build up its mind, and the American society at that time, build up their mind about the efficacy, the morality, and the justification for the Vietnam War. Now we have ECOWAS heads of state gathering together to talk about Niger Republic. But the people of Niger Republic, really, what's in their hearts and minds? They are happy. I have friends, I have business colleagues in Niamey. And when I speak to them, everybody is telling me that they wish that the military had even done this earlier than what they did earlier this year.
All right.
So, what I want to conclude here in saying is that, look, we need to wake up and smell the coffee. The journalism we are practicing today, we need to look at it and see, are the people really in sync with us, or we are simply just following rules and regulations, and the hearts and minds of the people have been lost.
All right.
I mean, look at what the interview you had with the journalist from Egypt. Look at that country, and I see a lot of similarities across Africa. Big men are coming back into our politics as they were doing in the 70s with dictatorship, and they are muzzling out voices that are opposite to them.
All right, John.
That most times are popular than they are.
John, I do feel very tempted to, yield my mic to you. Unfortunately, you've taken quite a bit of your quota. I want to say thank you for your contribution, and perhaps expanding on this conversation. Camry, I hear John's points, right? And I completely understand where they're coming from. But two things on the matter of technology and just the perception of journalism and the ability to do the job. I have personal conversation with a number of friends who would typically listen and say, oh, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? The criticisms of journalism are such that if we were engineers in this room, the people, our people, our audience would not be taking us on in the same way and criticizing simply because it's such a technical job.
Right.
But people seem to miss that journalism is also a technical job simply because it seems like, for instance, if it's radio, is it not just to talk?
It's just talking.
On print, is it not just to write? Do you get? And it seems like writing opinions. And so the actual profession itself, the things that make it a technical job, are sidelined because someone will read Hausa in school, read Arabic studies, read, information sciences, and then come and call themselves a journalist. And you sort of talked about this when you were giving a recap. And on the matter of podcasts, phasing out radio, I hear John, but we're not America.
No,
we're also not the United Kingdom. Yeah, we've got quite a few podcasts on stream now, but we're a country where millions of people are not connected to the power grid. We're in a country where we have 150 plus million people who have access to telco services, they're subscribers. But how many of those people do constant data? And when they do, how much of that data is to WhatsApp and to Facebook? So there's a middle class disconnect that because we listen to podcasts, we think that Nigeria is overwhelmingly shifting from radio and TV into podcasts.
What I'll say is this. I'll give an example. The two-way radio was invented over 100 years ago, I believe it was. And up till now, you've got your 5G Android phones, iPhones, and so on and so forth. They have not phased out the two-way radio. The two-way radio still has a use that only the two-way radio can do. and do very well. Don't take my word for it. Look to policing, look to construction sites, and so on and so forth. So two-way radio, as old as it is not obsolete. What we've had is the communication space open up to other tools and so on and so forth. That's all that's happened. Same thing's happening with journalism. Look, the needs to consume truth and accuracy is always going to be there. Right now, there is a digital disruption going on, no doubt about it. The way we manage our information, the way we consume information, that's evolving, that's changing. But again, it will not be able to replace, for example, the radio. Look, the radio is the most common means of communication. It's the most convenient. There are places where you don't even need batteries. There are these wind-up radios. So radio is always going to be radio. Quick enough to reach the people and so on and so forth. It's easy to access. It's not your satellite television. It's always going to have its place. All we are seeing is that communication space opening up. Are they disrupting? Yes, they are. Yes, they are, especially when you look at the bottom line. Trust me, I know this more than not. Every 3 months, I'm reminded of it when I put together the quarterly reports. But there is an economic cost to conventional ad spend, advertising habits, and so on and so forth, without question, without a doubt. Some people have said, look at the law. Some people have said, we need to sanction people who are not registered journalists that are subject to the gatekeepers, which John was talking about there. By the way, John, I just want to say thank you very much. I do commend your level of professionalism by not even naming names, even though we know who we're talking about. I really do appreciate it. It shows he's a very matured and sound mind.
He chose not to look for trouble this morning. That's why. John is
he's a rabble rouser.
Yeah,
John, we remember you from Friday.
All right, thank you all the same, John. So, again, these disruptions, they are there. And the bottom line is this. Part of this came up in the conference. A media house that chooses to practice journalism in the way it should be practiced with those fundamental ethics of truth and accuracy will get their due. Those who are into sensationalism will, people will wake up and realize.
We hear you, Camry. Dr. Paul is on the line this morning. Dr. Paul, good morning.
Morning.
Hi, Dr. Paul. Good morning.
Morning, Dr. Paul.
Journalists in Nigeria, I believe, issue of investigating journalism died when they were passed on in a gruesome manner. Today, I believe journalists in Nigeria have been manacled and handcuffed. Where a journalist is supposed to see a check on the government. Government is now regulating them, telling them don't do this. Just like some radio station and some countries, not like police program. Of the NPC sanctions and so on. So these are the issues. A country cannot develop all those in authority. We will not be afraid of committing an offense where there is no journalistic freedom. But as a matter of fact, no freedom for press all over the world, absolute freedom. But here in Nigeria, it's like different.
Dr. Paul, that's not entirely accurate, and I will tell you this. First of all, I understand what you mean when you refer to Dele Giwa. It was quite, he was very, very popular, and the case was well publicized. But I can tell you now, there are solid investigative journalists. Yusuf Ali, the name I called, he's been taken to court over 13 times in recent history, and he's won all his cases because of the level of exposure he's brought by his pieces. He's the managing editor of a newspaper. So there are investigative journalists. They're still out there. They're doing their jobs. And regarding gatekeeping and being gagged, I will tell you this. I carried out an investigation about 3 years ago. This was during the social conditional cash transfer. Dr. Paul, hang on. I did this on radio. All right, this was in the FCT, by the way. I did this on radio. This is where the headquarters of the MBC is. I carried out the investigation, made my findings known on air for about 6 or 7 weeks, almost 2 months. I wasn't gagged. Nobody came and told me, hey, my friend, what are you saying there? So I went to look at the conditional cash transfer. It worked in some places it didn't. And this was all, these are conversations I had on air. I wasn't gagged. So we need to stop telling ourselves that we are being gagged. The media space is a licensed space. It must be regulated, or else some people will hijack it for some very, very bad reasons. There must be rules. It's like a football match. You can't go and play football and say, why is the referee blowing the whistle? There have to be rules, or else the game won't make sense.
All right, so Dr. Paul, let's give you another 30 seconds to wrap up. As you know, we have shorter time today.
I'd like to prove the argument.
Go ahead.
Because of respect to unearth the truth of what happened there. So I don't want to go into argument with them.
So would you rather we have a couple of investigative journalists die today before you have put some sort of...
Before we believe they are working?
No. It's not the area I'm going. Because of the way we are here, people prefer that truth to come from a foreign media. Because none of you now people to have one-on-one. How much do you want?
None of
how
who?
Much? No journalist will be very bold.
Dr. Paul, hold on.
I don't know why you...
No, Dr. Paul, I mean, it's a very... Hold on, Dr. Paul. Dr. Paul, hold on.
In this country, people like to tackle that.
Dr. Paul, just a moment. It's an overly simplistic approach that you have just used. First of all, the president has agency to a very large degree to determine whether he will sit with press or not. And you talk about Nigerians being more interested in foreign media. You've just essentially implicated even people, not just politicians and government officials, who choose a big foreign name as opposed to a local radio name. And even here in the country, there's still specific names that public officials choose to first go to do any sort of address. And it's disingenuous to say that journalists in Nigeria will not ask the president a question. That's not true. There are dynamics. First of all, if the press team of the president's handlers decide that they will allow some media house to come, sit down, ask the president questions, interview, whatever the case may be, there's a process. There's a vetting of who will ask the questions, how long the conversation will be for, whether it will be recorded or live, what sort of areas you're going to touch. The issue is whether our government officials know how to say, I've accused you of this, but they can say no comment, or tactically avert the question if they don't want to give an answer. So it's not the media alone. It's a very simplistic view, and we need to be more holistic.
I hear you.
I get off my soapbox.
If I could get on it for 30 seconds, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Nabila. Camry, just to come back to you very quickly, we were talking about Niger Republic, and I wanted to ask if you still think that the youth of Niger Republic are being emotional with the sort of support they are offering to the military junta, given the fact that 90% of the multinationals that were mining uranium, I believe, in Niger Republic were owned by the French government, and that a lot of the resources that were available in Niger were usually exported to France. Their currency is actually dependent on France's economy.
Yes, it is. Let me qualify what I said clearly. They were being justifiably emotional because colonialism is an emotional conversation. You're talking about where you belong, your identity as a people. It's a very strong emotional conversation. It always has been, always will be. That's my use of the term, emotional. So again, I'll say this, Stephen. We are in a situation as the Economic Community of West African States whereby Nigerians, should they choose to say, oh, we want a military government instead of democracy. Unfortunately for them, they don't exist in isolation. They've got neighbors who are concerned about what's going on in their house because their behaviors, their choices could easily affect their neighbors. We don't exist, no country exists in isolation. It's just like Russia and Ukraine. Why is the war going on? Russia is not interested in having NATO right on its doorstep. It simply isn't. So the conversation is beyond what Nigerians want, and that is a sovereign state. We're not talking about their sovereignty. We're simply talking about their choices and how their neighbors are receiving these choices. If your neighbors are scared about something you are doing, then you need to pause for a second and ask yourself, do I really want to keep antagonizing these people?
Right. Well, thank you very much, Camry Apollo, for sitting with us this morning and speaking on the news review. That's all we can take today, but Now Breakfast continues momentarily with Business Now. Stay with us.
Stay tuned to your Beyond the News station daily for our up-to-the-minute compact news bulletins from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., 4 p.m. and 6 p.m., bringing you a wide range of local and international news from our news desk. Stay informed, stay updated on Radio Now 95.3 FM.
From the Central Business District of Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital, this is 95.3 Business Now.
Let's get the new business and markets week started here on Business Now this Monday, December the 11th. I am Aramide Folorunsho. A global credit rating agency, Moody's Investor Service, on Friday revised its outlook on Nigeria from stable to positive, while emphasizing the country's financial health and reform efforts led by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration. The ratings firm says in the statement that it affirmed Nigeria's CAA1 long-term foreign and local currency issuer ratings, citing possible reversal of the deterioration in Nigeria's fiscal and external position. The credit rating firm, however, highlighted persisting weaknesses, including Nigeria's vulnerable fiscal and external positions, intensified inflationary pressures, and uncertainty surrounding oil production and external funding. Moody's expressed caution about Nigeria's challenging economic and social conditions, characterized by poverty, social disparities, and growing unrest due to inflation, which could impede or reverse the reforms of the Tinubu's government. Meanwhile, Julie Kozak, the Director of Communications Department at the International Monetary Fund, has advised the Central Bank of Nigeria to further increase the country's key lending rate at its next Monetary Policy Committee meeting, which has been postponed twice this year under the current leadership of Olayemi Cardoso. Speaking at a press conference, Kozak noted that the CBN, under its new leadership, is withdrawing excess liquidity from the system, which was contributing to high inflation in Nigeria, which is currently at 27%. The First Bank Group has appointed Olukorede Adebayo as the new managing director of First Bank United Kingdom. The bank praised Adebayo's outstanding leadership qualities, strategic vision, and deep understanding of the global financial landscape. Nigeria's company income tax collection increased by 115.90% in 1 year, from 810.19 billion naira in the third quarter of 2022 to 1.75 trillion naira in the third quarter of 2023. And that's according to the latest third quarter 2023 CIT collection report released by the National Bureau of Statistics. The NBS report shows that the company's income tax collection increased by 14.27% from 1.53 trillion naira in the second quarter of 2023 to 1.75 trillion naira in the third quarter. Moody's Investor Service on Friday announced it has moved Nigeria's credit outlook from stable to positive, citing possible reversal of the deterioration in Nigeria's fiscal and external position resulting from the Bola Tinubu's government reforms. Let's get some perspectives into the latest Nigeria's positive outlook review in my conversation over the weekend with Paul Alaje, a policy analyst and senior economist at SPM Professionals.
Well, I must say that Modi must account some of the recent developments in Nigeria, which of course included the borrowing from government in hard currency, which they hope will help stabilize the FX environment, as well as the new action of the president generally for global partnership and political stability. And if we also look at a number of reports coming from the commercial banks in Nigeria, it has not been as bad as one might have expected it to be. We are seeing also that in the last couple of weeks, FX at the parallel market 100 to 1,250. Even though the gap is still much between what is obtainable at parallel and official rates, but we see relative stability on both sides.
Perhaps this, among other things, is why Modi is expectant that Nigeria should be upgraded from stable to a positive rating, as they have just published.
Well, indeed, that Moody's thinks the reforms by the new administration are good enough, but how can the government further use its reforms to achieve fiscal balance?
Well, if we look at the reforms that have been carried out by the government, one, subsidy removal, that reform has ensured that government have more money at their disposal. But I can tell you, it has also put more states in trouble. This because, one, people are finding it challenging to even do businesses. So we have seen some level of poverty increase at the state level. And when you account for it, it will reflect at the federal level. We have also seen the devaluation of Naira, a massive devaluation of Naira as a result of policy Moody's upgrading. And if you look at where Modi is coming from, it has put more money in the pocket of states and the federal government as well as local government. And these monies are supposed to be used to finance capital projects. But when you flip and check the other side, which is not clearly reported by Moody, you will realize that this debt has also increased significantly in debt. I give you an instance. Osun State is owing over $99 million in foreign external loan. I'm not talking about internal. I want to stay with external loan. Because we are devalued, the money Osun is owing now in Naira time, even though it remains the same in dollar terms, is now almost times 2. In spite of the increasing share of revenue that goes to Osun is still really, stressed in terms of debt. So by the time you see what comes out of Osun in the next 2 to 3 years, I can tell you that the state may still struggle financially, in spite of subsidy removal, with more money in the pocket of government, and so on and so forth. So before I come from policy, I just use Osun as a case study. It's so true for quite a number of other states. At least this story I shared about Osun is so true for about 15 more states, at least at the minimum. So we should look at the realities of our policy. That is why international rating agencies are saying Nigerian government is doing fine, because they are looking at it from outside and there are some representatives here. But when you look at the quality of life of Nigerians in Nigeria, it's a total mismatch from what these rating agencies are stating.
But again, Nigeria's rating is still at CAA1, and that's 7 levels into the junk. Are there reforms? These reforms, are they also enough to improve the country's credit profile?
Well, I think that some of these reforms, to some extent, means government should have funds. But in spite of all our search for foreign investors emaciated by over 80%, in the last 10 to 12 years to what was obtainable as of 2022, according to the Bureau of Statistics. 2, when you look at the credit rating of Nigeria is also quite low. So in spite of this reform, he has not really done so much about credit worthiness of Nigeria. What he has done is to put more liquidity in the pocket of government so that government can be more responsible and invest more in the economy. And perhaps when foreign investors see this, they will also be at a comfortable level to invest in Nigeria. Unfortunately, there are other non-financial reasons why foreign investors may not be coming at this time, which includes insecurity, corruption, and so many other reasons, which of course in the little time we have, we may not be able to extract them comprehensively.
What is your outlook on petrol prices and exchange rates in the near to medium term?
Well, I want to believe that government will continue to intervene when it comes to petrol prices, even though we have seen slight queues, intermittently, it comes, it disappears, because government is engaging, and that this has to do with, it may affect popularity of government. And this government is just running its first term. Tendencies are very high that this government may be interested in going for second term. And now the government manages these 2 key issues. Of course, will be part of the factor that will determine the return of the government, if any at all. So what do I see as a person? I see a situation where even if there will be an increase, it will be really very minimal. We have seen increase. Most filling stations have changed their prices. You know, from those who were charging 600 in southwestern states, we've seen them change their prices to about 620, 630 in some instances. Why those major marketers still try in some cases to maintain the same prices, that was obtainable before. So I think with the involvement of government, because if you ask me, government is certainly providing support to perhaps major marketers in the oil and gas sector today. So I see government continue to intervene because of the impact already on poverty, impact on inflation, and a few other things as we have it today. So if you go to the FX market, this seems to have been completely out of the control of government. We are really very hopeful that government will salvage the situation by supporting exports. But as I talk to you today, there are no indication that government has made any plan. People have said 7 months is too small for us to evaluate the support government has provided. That perhaps we should wait till 1 year. But for me, the journey of 1,000 miles, it begins with a step. We have already done 7 out of the 1 year. Should we wait until things are totally damaged before we start speaking to issues, which I think government should look at? As a result, if Nigeria is going to be salvaged from the quagmire that may be coming, worse than what we have, we need central bank, Ministry of Finance, and the coordinating Minister of the Economy, as well as Ministry of Trade and Investment, among other sectors, to have policy dialogue that will come into unison of purpose for President Tinubu and see how Nigeria can be lifted out of, import-dominated country. And of course, how we can support improve power generation, road infrastructure, technical know-how for our people, in the short, in the medium, and especially in the long term, so that we can lift our country out of crisis.
This is 95.3 Business Now.
Paul Alaje, policy analyst and senior economist at SBM Professionals, chatting to me on the latest Moody's Outlook report on Nigeria. Coming up after the break, we'll be analyzing activities in the Nigeria market week that ended Friday. This is Business Now.
This is 95.3 Business Now.
Every second and every minute, something new happens. The news breaks.
People at the spot, and angry mob decided to bomb.
Everyone wants to share it, but not everyone wants to dig deep. Now that's where we come in. We bring you the news and go beyond with in-depth conversations and analysis with stakeholders.
I honestly think that the federal government on its own part has broken.
If voters or more people want to be part of that decision-making process, they need to be part.
GDP is not a good measure of development anyways. We are not there yet. We need to counter the narrative of the fact that their vote does not count. If their vote does not count.
We bring you the story within the story. And that's what makes us tick. We are Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos, and we go beyond the news.
We are Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos.
This is 95.3 Business Now.
Welcome back to Business Now. The Nigeria hit an all-time low of 1,099.05 kobo to the US dollar on Friday, marking a 30.36% decline from its closing rate of 843 naira 07 kobo per dollar at the official window. Meanwhile, the stock market finished marginally in the green by 0.17%. on the back of profit taking in the week, while bargain hunting for higher yields prevailed at the fixed income market as institutional investors commenced their traditional year-end portfolio balancing. David Adori is a licensed dealer and the CEO of High Cap Securities Limited, and he provided more insight into the trading week. Take a listen.
The equities market was very, very vibrant last week. In the 5 trading days of the week, the equities market appreciated on 3 of the trading days and only declined on 2 days. And at the end of the week, the equities market closed positively. It appreciated by up to about 0.1 And so it was an interesting week, a profitable week for investors. A lot of people left the market with huge profits. And then the trading volumes were normal, a little bit above the average, because the moving average has changed recently. In the past, it used to be about 250 million units per day, but I'm seeing daily volumes of up to about 500 million units now. And then in the past, the daily value used to hover around 3 billion naira. But we are seeing a daily value around 6-7 billion naira these days. All pointing to the fact that there is a high liquidity in the equities market, and investors' sentiments remain very, very high. Of course, the movement of the all-share index above 70,000 points has been sustained. The market closed at over 71,000 points last week. So this sustained rally has beaten everybody's imagination. Where that is where the market is now.
All right. Let's also look at trading in fixed income at FMDQ. What were the drivers of that huge trading that we saw last week?
You know, FMDQ specializes principally on fixed income securities trading, and is the main platform for trading money market instruments too. In recent times, the Central Bank of Nigeria has been quite active in the OMO market. That is the open market operation. Yes, of the money market, wherein they have been buying and selling treasury bills. And the rates on treasury bills, the rates have increased recently to attract investors migrating into that space. I think as an instrument of OMO to regulate money supply in the economy, rather than relying on interest rate hike, CBN has been moving the OMO rate for treasury bills. I think the last one I saw was around over 17%. So that is quite huge, and that has attracted a lot of investors into investing in treasury bills, thus increasing the volume of trade in that space. And because FMDQ is the primary platform where those trades occur, that is why you may have seen the quantum leap in the volume of trade on fixed income on that platform.
How about the devaluation of the naira? Talk to me about the effects of this on Nigerian stocks so far.
Yeah, the equities market apparently has been trending towards reflecting the devaluation in the valuation of stocks, because you can see that the equities market has continued to rise, apparently in tandem with the depreciation of the naira. So the implication, therefore, is that the equity market is targeting the depreciation of the naira and appreciating accordingly, and it's also looking at the rising inflation and trying to match up with inflation. So I think those are two major factors that are pushing the equities market up.
Okay, so we've got P&G has just joined the league of companies that are exiting Nigeria. What's your response to investors?
Well, apparently the market reforms have taken a toll on the financial well-being of multinational manufacturers in the country. And so a lot of them are now operating with negative shareholders' funds, So that is a very serious situation for them. It looks like a lot of them have become insolvent as a result of the reforms in the foreign exchange market.
This is 95.3 Business Now.
David Atori, a licensed dealer and the CEO of Highcap Securities Limited, speaking to the trading week ended Friday the 8th. Well, coming up next is our weekly trading report across the various markets. We'll be right back.
This is 95.3 Business Now.
Every second and every minute, something new happens. The news breaks.
3 people at a spot, and the angry mob decided to burn.
Everyone wants to share it, but not everyone wants to dig deep. Now that's where we come in. We bring you the news and go beyond with in-depth conversations and analysis with stakeholders.
I honestly think that the federal government on its own part has broken.
If voters or more people want to be part of that decision-making process, they need to be part
GDP is not a good measure of development anyways. We are not there yet. We need to counter the narrative of the fact that our vote does not count. If your vote does not count.
We bring you the story within the story. And that's what makes us tick. We are Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos, and we go beyond the news.
We are Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos.
This is 95.3 Business Now.
I am Aramide Folorisho on Business Now, and let's get straight into the trading week that ended Friday the 8th of December. Starting with equities, the domestic equities market finished on a positive note as the NGX All-Share Index recorded a week-on-week gain of 0.17%, primarily driven by investors' interest in stocks such as UBA 2.74%, Access Corp printed 1.25%, JITCO 0.26%, Airtel Africa 2.10%, ETI, Ecobank Transnational Incorporated roared 9.79%, and PZ Cousins also printed 9.87%. As a result, the year-to-date return increased to 39.6%, while the market capitalization increased by 66.7 billion naira to 39.2 trillion naira. Well, across frontier African markets, the Egyptian index was down 0.07% on Thursday, while the Kenya Bourse was slightly better by 0.01% in Friday's trading. Here in West Africa, the regional exchange in Abidjan gained 0.63%, and the Ghana stock market was positive by 0.06%. In Southern Africa, the Zimbabwe stock roared by 2.25%. while the JSE in South Africa slumped by 1.33% at the close of trading on Friday. Let's get to money markets. Overnight lending rates among commercial banks increased by 326 basis points week-on-week to 19.6%, as the combined impact of net NTD issuances of 500 billion naira and the late cash reserve ratio debit by the central bank squeezed out liquidity in the financial system. So as a result, the average system liquidity set lower at a net short position of 109.30 billion naira. Codros Capital says in its weekly report that further pressures on system liquidity is expected in the new week due to debits for December FGM bond of about 360 billion naira. Well, trading at the Treasury bill secondary market turned bullish as the average yield across segments advanced by 43 basis points to 11.3%. Analysts at Codros Capital attribute this performance to the tight liquidity conditions last week as demand for Treasury bills subsided. And activities in the FGM bond secondary market were bullish as market players cherry-picked attractive bonds across the curve. Accordingly, the average yield across all instruments declined by 84 basis points to 14.9%. Today, the Debt Management Office will be holding a primary market auction via the reopening of 3 dated bonds worth a total of 360 billion naira. On Wednesday, the DMO is also scheduled to hold a primary treasury auction looking to roll over maturities worth some 13.58 billion naira. And those auctions are expected to drive yields direction in the new week at the secondary market. Well, let's bring in the currencies market statistics for the week from the week that ended Friday the 8th of December from FMDQ Securities Exchange. A total turnover of $557.85 million was recorded at the spot and FX derivatives segment. That showed a decline of 6.63% from transactions done in the earlier week. FMDQ reports that the weekly decline in FX derivatives turnover was driven mainly by the 67.67% decrease in turnover at the FX forwards window. Meanwhile, there were no trades executed in both the exchange-traded FX futures and the cleared Naira-settled non-deliverable forwards market of FMDQ. In the FX spot market, total value of transactions was $551.74 million, down by 4.63% on a week-on-week basis. Let's check the exchange rate window. The average Nigerian autonomous foreign exchange fixing rate was 867 naira 76 kobo to the US dollar, representing an increase of 0.86% for the local currency against the US dollar. And quickly looking at oil prices, which rallied Friday but still booked the 7th straight week of losses as record production and demand worries weighed on prices. The West Texas Intermediate contract for January rose 2.73% to settle at $71.23 a barrel. The Brent crude contract for February gained 2.42% to settle at $75.84 a barrel. The U.S. crude and the global benchmark lost about 4% for the week despite Friday's rebound. The last time WTI booked a 7-week losing streak was 5 years ago. Friday's price gains could be a sign that the market has found a floor for now after falling for 6 straight sessions, said Phil Flynn, analyst at Price Futures Group. Then the U.S. Labor Department data released on Friday showed stronger than expected job growth and a drop in the unemployment rate, signaling resilience in the labor market and dampening hopes that the Fed will cut interest rates by early next year. And that's the package on Business Now this Monday. Make sure you have a profitable week, everyone. I am Aramide Folorunsho, and it's bye for now.
This is 95.3 Business Now.
We are Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos.
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm a trader operating a chain of supermarkets. I engage in monthly comfortable contributions with my insurance company. It gave me the opportunity to inject capital into my business during peak periods and reap handsome returns. I never knew that an insurance company can be that helpful. Kudos to Mutual Benefits Assurance for such innovative and business-sustaining insurance products.
Take advantage of the delightful offers and experience the peace that comes with knowing that you can count on Mutual Benefits Assurance to protect you and what you value the most. Call Mutual Benefits Assurance today on 0905 474 4444 to get started and enjoy these and more, or visit www.mutualng.com for more information. Mutual Benefits Assurance, creating and protecting wealth. This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
Across Nigeria, Africa, and the world, this is Radio Now News.
Good morning, it's Monday the 11th of December and you're listening to Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos. I am Stephen Imediego with the news at 9 a.m. Lagos State Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Mr. Lawal Pedro, says all laws of the state will henceforth be effectively enforced to encourage economic activities and protect investments in the state. Speaking during an interactive session with journalists at the weekend, Attorney General Pedro said one of the key focuses of Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu's administration is to evolve a justice system where laws are not just enforced but voluntarily obeyed by all residents to drive economic activities and safeguard all investments in the state. The Attorney General also commented on the recent demolition of some buildings in the state, saying it doesn't take much for a citizen to comply with the law. He added that the media must begin to enlighten and educate members of the public on the need to obey laws, as some defaulters knowingly break the law only to cry foul when the law is laid down. The Ministry of Works says 6 committees have been constituted to look into the 1.5 trillion naira worth of debt which the federal government is owing contractors. In a statement yesterday by his Chief Press Secretary Uchenna Orji, the Minister of Works, Senator David Umahi, said the 6 committees, one per geopolitical zone, would look into certified certificates generated before May 29, 2023 and from May 29, 2023 to date. The committees would also review the approved and unapproved variation of prices and all augmentations that were approved or are yet to be approved and make recommendations to the ministry's management. Minister Umahi urged contractors being owed to approach the committees with all documents to back up their claims from Tuesday the 12th till Friday the 22nd of December 2023 from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the Minister's Conference Room, 1st floor, Federal Ministry of Works Headquarters, Mabushi, Abuja.
This
In business and economy, no fewer than 321,000 micro, medium and small enterprises have enjoyed wholesale funding of $1.4 billion in 6 years, according to a recently released World Bank report. The report, titled Tackling Access to Finance for Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises, says the funds disbursed through the Development Bank of Nigeria were to provide long-term loans and risk-sharing facilities to small enterprises, of which 66% were women-owned and 12% first-time borrowers. The bank also said access to finance remained a major, long-standing obstacle faced by micro, small and medium enterprises in Nigeria. This challenge made the Finance Ministry request the World Bank's support in launching the Nigeria Development Finance Project with a $500 million loan support. On the foreign scene, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said yesterday that he regrets the UN Security Council's failure to demand a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. While addressing Qatar's Doha Forum, Secretary General Guterres said the Council was, in his own words, paralyzed by geostrategic divisions that were undermining solutions to the Israel-Hamas conflict. Guterres had convened an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council after 2 months of attacks that have left more than 17,700 people dead in Gaza, most of them women and children, according to the territory's health ministry. The Secretary General deployed the rarely used Article 99 of the United Nations Charter to bring to the Council's attention any matter which, in his opinion, may threaten the maintenance of international peace and security. And in sports, Granada's match against Athletic Bilbao yesterday in La Liga was abandoned after a supporter died in the stands of the Nuevo Los Cármenes Stadium. The match was paused after 18 minutes with visitors Athletic leading 1-0 as the Granada fan received medical attention. La Liga went on to confirm the match was abandoned because of the sad death of a fan in a statement. Players from both sides left the pitch 20 minutes after play was suspended, with supporters then requested to leave the stadium after the decision was eventually taken to abandon the game. In a statement, Granada offered their condolences to the fans' family and friends. He was a season ticket holder. And that's all for the news at 9. We urge you to listen live on www.thisisradionow.com and to connect with us on social media On Facebook, we're www.facebook.com/This is Radio Now, and on all other social media platforms, we are at Radio Now 953 FM. My name is Stephen Imediegu, and I urge you to stay tuned as Now Breakfast continues.
This is Radio Now News.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
Kwamitin kula da daidaita harkokin tsarin kuɗi wato FSRCC tare da haɗin gwiwar hukumar yada labarai ta ƙasa wato NBC na mai ƙoƙarin yin gargaɗi ga mutane domin su ƙaurace wa 'yan damfara da ke damun al'umma wato IFOs wanda hakan haɗari ne ga jama'a da kuma tsarin hada-hadar kuɗaɗen Najeriya. Ana mai shawartar gaba ɗaya mutane da su guji yin mu'amala da masu gudanar da harkokin kuɗaɗe marasa lasisi. Ku tabbatar da kun yi binciken matsayin lasisin waɗannan kamfanonin da tsare-tsarensu akan waɗannan yanar gizon. www.cbn.gov.ng, www.nicom.gov.ng, www.pencom.gov.ng, www.sec.gov.ng domin kai korafi ga duk wanda ake zargi ga wannan haramtacciyar harka zuwa ga hukumomin doka da suka dace. A kira 0700 225 5226 0800 225 5226 ko +234 817 665 6273 FSRCC.
Technology is constantly evolving and artificial intelligence is powering everything around us.
So for nations to continue to survive in the world where artificial intelligence is now everywhere around us, we must participate in governance structure in terms of how it is managed.
At Radio Now 95.3 FM, we're telling the story of the evolution of technology like nobody else can. Now that's another reason to listen to us.
You're listening to Now Breakfast.
A very good morning and welcome to the Newsmaker. Nigeria and Angola have rejected production cuts by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC. Cuts for Nigeria allow for a 1.5 million barrel per day quota for the year 2024, an allocation which is at variance with Nigeria's 1.78 million barrel per day target, which will drive the 2024 budget. The National Bureau of Statistics says the sector contributed 5.48% to Nigeria's gross domestic product and 82.50% of the total exports from January till September. Our newsmaker in today's conversation is Ronke Onadeko, an energy consultant. In this discussion with Radio Now's Nabila Usman, Ms. Onadeko starts off by sharing her thoughts on Nigeria and Angola's rejection of the latest OPEC cuts.
Nigeria is a member of OPEC, and within the OPEC group, there are also a caucus that actually determine, when we should cut, when we should liberalize, and things like that. And yes, they've called out now for a cut in the volumes and the production quota for Nigeria. And the pressure obviously is there from, Russia and the other members of the cartel that, everybody needs to drop their costs. However, it's not a very good thing for Nigeria because first and foremost, we are not producing as much as we can. That's the first thing. And then we also have pegged our 2024 budget on a particular amount of crude production at a particular price. So with this cut, it's not just, we're not going to be producing as much as we would like to. It's the fact that the funds and the dollars we need to run our economy in 2024 is shrinking. And we don't have enough yet. We're actually borrowing to support the amount we're expecting. So having to cut back is a double jeopardy for us. So it's understandable that Nigeria and Angola are actually not particularly happy. I think Nigeria has pegged 2024 budget at $77.
Yes, 77 to a barrel, which is interesting because I think as of right now, a barrel is going for just under that, around 75, 76 or so. So I wonder if that's really a safe benchmark to be using.
So I think it was unrealistic. I actually think it was over. We were really trying to shore up our income for next year, and I don't think that's realistic. And with the 1.78 million barrels a day that we thought we would produce, anything can happen. We know how volatile the Niger Delta is. We know that issues could happen, and now they're asking us to even cut back on that. So that really puts Nigeria in a very precarious position in terms of revenues and our economic outlook.
To what extent can we really negotiate our quota? And I mean this amicably, because I know in the past the cartel has been understanding with African countries or member states that have economic woes. So Nigeria has benefited from not having cuts while other members would receive cuts. So this time around, clearly a very different conversation. In the past, we've not been able to meet up to the uncut quota. So to what extent, what can we use as leverage?
So right now, it would be good if the people who are in charge, the president is the de facto minister of petroleum, if they get to speak to the right people and explain to them that we've had lower productions than we could have had, and this is what deficit we should have. So can they allow us a few months so that we don't start when everybody's cut starts? We tail out towards the end of the cuts. So if everybody's supposed to cut from now and it's a gradual cut till maybe April, for example, if we start to cut back towards the end, hopefully the cut will bring about a firmer price, a firmer dollar price for a crude barrel. Because what usually happens is a demand and supply thing. When you cut down prices, there's an artificial scarcity. So the demand and the price are supposed to increase. However, it's the bad part of that for us is that if that happens, when we go to the international market to buy petroleum products such as diesel, jet fuel, petrol, they are going to be more expensive as well.
And this then makes me wonder about, from May 29th, the president already said he wanted us to hit 2 million barrels a day. And as of now, the administration continues to insist that we will hit that by the first quarter of next year. It's just a few months away. Early this year, we were doing under 1 million barrels per day. Now we're somewhere around 1.7 inclusive of condensates. So how feasible is it that we will hit 2 million? And when the president made the pledge, the promise, the whatever it may be, I don't know if he included condensates in the figure. So how realistic is it that we'll meet up in just about 4 months?
We haven't done 2 million barrels a day in a very long time. And with the cuts that we're supposed to undergo at the moment, it's not likely. So the ability to produce 2 million barrels a day is far-fetched, but it's not impossible with the right incentives. If everybody's putting their cash calls in as at when due, that could happen. But then if there is an OPEC cuts and we are not supposed to produce that much, then there isn't very much Nigeria can do to prove that they can do because that would mean if people are producing, they have to shut it in. They have to shut in their wells to ensure that we don't go above the OPEC quota.
So I want us to come to the conversation around refining. As you know, the Dangote refinery received its first batch of crude just last week, and it's been met with quite a bit of, if you like, excitement, even if it's muted, because there was a lot of expectation that we would have started, at least from a layman's perspective, that we would have started seeing the refinery put out refined oil much earlier in the year. Of course, a lot of the experts in the industry say that this is about the right time, considering where construction was at that time. Right now, within the industry, how is this first batch of oil being received?
Okay, so the first thing is to understand that the refinery capacity is 650,000 barrels a day. And it's the largest refinery right now in Nigeria, and it's the only operational one. But we've just received 1 million barrels of crude oil from the Agbami fields. And that's just like a day and a half's worth of production, if we look at it from the perspective that it's a 650,000 barrel per day refinery. So I'm thinking this is a test run, nothing to get excited about. It's not as if they've received enough for the month, or they've told us, we're getting the next batch in another few days. So just from just the information we have of the quantity of crude that has been received and the capacity of production of the refinery, it's a test run. So I'm telling people not to get to the thought that we're going to stop importing petroleum products and we're going to start buying from the Dangote refinery next week or the week after. So that's the first point that is very important to understand. However, if everything goes as planned, then we do have a rope that's giving us some advantage. So we're not going to have to buy as much as we're buying internationally. We're going to save some foreign exchange, especially on shipping out and bringing back in. However, you're going to also get the issues where things, organizations like the Nigerian Ports Authority that make a lot of their money in foreign exchange from importation of products will be affected as well. So it's a win-win for Nigeria. The most exciting part of this for me is the fact that we're working towards becoming independent of importation. Two, a lot of skills are going to be built in-house. A lot of Nigerians are going to be employed, and the ripple effect of those things cannot be quantified in the Nigeria that we're in. So on one hand, we're thinking, okay, they might not supply all our needs and we will still bring in, but the significance of working towards a goal of having enough refining capacity locally is, it's a huge milestone. So it's something worth applauding. And now we're looking at Nigerians being employed in every area of the refining process, of also manufacturing that's going to use things from the petrochemical plants that are part of the refining network. And also, we are going to have services, people, catering companies attending to these people making uniforms, engineers, technicians, all kinds of industries are going to be shown up by this one act. So I think it's something worth celebrating.
Certainly so, but it doesn't take away that there are still concerns around where the priority lies. Granted, the Nigerian entity, government, we've got a 20% stake in the refinery, but by the time there is the crude, the refining process happens, there's questions on which market receives first. Is it the Nigerian market that gets the priority, or is it a shipping thing where, there's exporting to other countries because the Dangote group itself must make its money back?
Well, it's not just the fact that they have to make their money back. 90%, I'm sure, if not more, of what they have expended in putting this refinery together has been borrowed in foreign exchange. And so there is need for them to earn foreign exchange to start to pay back. And, with the crude costs that we're talking about now, the government is not going to be making enough foreign exchange for all the industries to depend on crude oil import sales to access foreign exchange. So the Dangote group will have to come to some agreement as to what percentage needs to be sold in foreign exchange outside the country for them to be able to service their debt. So that's their paramount focus.
Right.
They're not the government, and it's not their business to worry about how the government sustains its petroleum products. If we can match the price and match the currency, then we'll be at an advantage. But if we can't, we won't be able to blame them if they're taking their crude, their petroleum products out to ensure that they have enough forex to pay their bills.
So other parts of the nitty-gritty that are still, not clear for those of us outside the industry is around our ability to supply the refinery. So at 650,000 barrels a day, that capacity, we are doing 1.34 million or so without condensates. I think that's around 1.34, yes. So that's essentially about half of our daily production capacity. I'm now curious about how we sort of iron out the business end for refineries outside of the continent where we typically would ship crude to. I know that from an economic perspective, the country also has tried to do receiving forwards of payment because of where we are economically. So just those promises, we essentially have to fulfill them. So I wonder how you think about our ability to meet up with supply and who's going to be prioritized over who.
Okay, so I think we really need to take this Dangote refinery coming on stream in baby steps. It's a test period for them. There's going to be a lot of trial and error. There's going to be a lot of juggling around to make sure that all the different stakeholders are somewhat attended to. But I think we first and foremost need to make sure that the first batch of crude that goes in there comes out. They see what the refining yields are. They might have to make some adjustments to ensure, if they want to get more, depending on what you're the kind of crude you're refining. Are they going to want to bring in some heavier crudes to ensure that we're not burning premium crude? And I'll just give you an example or some clarity on this aspect. Nigeria has very good crude oil that's low in sulfur and highly demanded and very expensive. So what is happening is that we're going to be, the Dangote refinery is going to be refining that crude, which is a very high grade crude oil, which is not necessarily the cheapest crude. So the Dangote refinery might at some point still want to bring in heavier crudes with higher sulfur levels that are cheaper to blend to ensure that we are getting below or on-spec products into the Nigerian market. So there's still a lot of work that's going to go on. So they need to do the assay of whatever they produce on this first batch and see how they can blend to ensure that we're not just using the most expensive type of crude when we could be getting cheaper, especially in this time where everybody's quite sensitive to prices, and Nigerians are really complaining about the prices of petroleum products because of the removal of the subsidy.
So, essentially, this means we will see a reality where the Dangote refinery needs imported crude to just meet up.
They might choose to do that, or they might choose to make the most expensive one and export it to people whose countries need to bring down their sulfur, the sulfur in the air that they're burning. Yes. So there's so many options of what they might do depending on who is offering what and who is willing to pay what. Right. So the sulfur emissions is a major factor as to who the Dangote group will sell their crude oil to, the refined crude oil to.
I do wonder, there was a point this year where we were having trouble with being able to sell our crude, right? So it was everywhere in the news that our ships were still laden with oil weeks and in some cases a few months after they were sent out. And this comes back to the question of whether we will see ourselves in that place again. Earlier when we were discussing the benchmark, you talked about internal issues, right? But there's also still very clearly the external shocks that are beyond our control. Possibilities around what the global economy will be like. A number of countries are still actively trying to avert recessions. So I wonder how you see that playing out for us.
Across the world right now, there is a downturn in production. And once that happens, there's less demand for crude oil to power industries, depending on how the winter is actually. As we're going into the winter months, a lot of countries might need more fuel for heating. So that might help us put more products out, more crude oil out into the global market. So there's so many factors that are playing concurrently. So we have to be very careful not to have a full picture in our minds of what's going to happen. That's why I said we need to take this in baby steps. Let this production start. Once this production starts, let's see how the international market takes on the outflow from the Dangote refinery. And see how Nigeria positions itself to ensure that we're getting more from the Dangote refinery than importation from Europe or other countries.
I can't help but bring the Port Harcourt refinery into the conversation. We know that there are still plans to bring it on stream, and that refinery has a capacity of about, I think, 210,000 barrels a day. And really, the same question would still apply around where our priorities and obligations lie. The Nigerian people still very actively want an oil sector that is still that belongs to the public purse, if you like. There's still, and it could be political sentiment. You could, just sum it up in that. But there is still a negative sentiment that we are having to depend on the private sector for this critical bit of our economy. So if were able to see the Port Harcourt refinery come on stream within, say, the next year, how does that change the game?
I'm not very optimistic that the refinery will come on stream in the next 1 year. It has been an ongoing bait to Nigerians, knowing that Nigerians are emotional about having a national refinery that's working. And it makes a lot of unions very relevant. So there's always that tension between the politicians and the unions to ensure that it's an ongoing conversation. But I'm not optimistic that the refinery would work. And if it works, how long will it work for, and what will be the production level? And we also have to go back to the drawing board. If it's going to cost us the cost of a brand new refinery to keep fixing a refinery that is not optimized or cannot be optimized, is that the best use of money in an economy that's ailing and when we're borrowing? So I think Nigerians need to give the Dangote refinery its space, see how that works. If that's what we need to put our money and our hopes on, then let's focus on that and stop having all these pipe dreams about the refinery that we've been doing turnaround maintenance for the last 10, 15 years, and we haven't seen the light of day.
And this is another hot button issue, right? Because we have a number of experts who have advised the federal government to sell off the refineries. And if you speak to some political analysts, they'll tell you if any administration were to sell off the refineries, it would likely be this administration. So far, they've not necessarily spoken about it. But if it comes to that, do you actually see, for instance, those unions allowing that to go through? Because Nigerians are still calling for a fixing of each and every refinery.
I think once a country has alternatives, I mean, we shouldn't forget that the Nigerian government owns 20% of the Dangote refinery. So we just have to explain to Nigerians a little bit better that you haven't lost all. You have 20% of a working, income generating, cash flow positive entity is better than having 100% of something that's a money guzzler, a cost center, and we're not even sure that the cost invested in it will bring any results or would change the narrative from what it's been over the last 10, 15 years. So I think if the government were to speak, I think they should speak more and explain more and open up the minds of Nigerians to the fact that ownership in the Dangote refinery is just as probably even more valuable than the ownership of the Port Harcourt and the Warri refineries and the Kaduna refineries. And maybe the Kaduna refinery, for example, can now focus on heavy crudes, doing things like tar and, the lower bitumen level products. And let's just move on with what works and stop, hoping that the good old days when things were working could come back. I don't see the political will, and I don't think we have the money, the cash to do that.
I want to talk about the general security of the sector. Just, I think, over the weekend, we had the Nigerian Navy pull up a ship that was siphoning oil from one of the pipelines to, I think it had a capacity of about 15 million liters, right? And they were still in the process when they were caught. Now, this administration, that has happened quite a bit. A number of people point to a contract that was given to a private security firm. This was Tantita Services by the previous administration. So a number of people say, look, we can trace some of the discoveries we've made to that particular contract. Do you see a sort of a general improvement, if you like, expectations that we will continue to hear of more of these ships being being identified, being detained, and whatever the process may be?
Okay, so for every crude that is produced globally, there is almost a thumbprint that is unique to the crude and the country of origin. So oil theft and oil sales or stolen crude sales is something that we need to start to look at from a global perspective. Even if oil gets stolen in Nigeria, somebody's buying it. And it's not something you can refine in your backyard. There's some level of expertise, some level of industry knowledge that goes with it. So the security issues we're having in Nigeria are not isolated to, there's a private company, they have an oil well, and their crude is. Even within the system that are being monitored by the government, some of those places do not even have meters. So the government actually need to get their act together and make sure that there's proper metering, and then you can really identify the quantity of crude oil that we're losing. And then we know what we're putting forward to the security agencies. Because right now it's all, yes, crude oil got stolen, we apprehended a vessel, we've caught the people, but how much is really going out we still don't know. So I don't think things are getting better until I start seeing those fundamentals. I'm not going to believe that the government is really putting all the effort they can behind this. And it's a major loss to us financially. Major, major loss. If we're able to capture and bring to book all the losses and we have facts and figures to back it, I think we'll see a shift.
On this matter, it reminds me of the issues we had around smuggled fuel, right, especially to neighboring countries, and how one of the major reasons why that was a phenomenon was simply because our fuel was subsidized. And now it's very difficult to say this is post-subsidy. Let's just call it post-subsidy, something that looks like subsidy that's still back, whatever the case may be. We do know that we're paying more for fuel today than we were 7 months ago. And I wonder to what extent that reality has impacted the, if you like, illegal crude market.
The illegal crude market is just something that is always going to be there, unfortunately. What we need to do is to make sure that it's the barest minimum and that the bulk of production is actually being sold properly through the right channels. We're never going to eliminate this other market that exists. So how do we minimize that and maximize the real channels and ensuring that the funds that do go out come back in its entirety, not going through an NNPC machinery where by the time the figures are, the figures come out in an audited report, it's 2 years back. And there's not much you could do about what happened 2 years ago. Right. So every year we get figures, it's a year or 2 years behind, and it's post anything effective of making changes or making corrections.
Our newsmaker today is Ronke Onadeko. She was speaking with Nabila Usman about the recent decision of Nigeria and Angola to reject the latest OPEC cuts. Now Breakfast continues with Community Watch in just a moment. Do stay with us.
We are intentional about the stories we tell and the language we use in telling them.
Intentional about the people we speak to and why we speak to them.
Because here at Radio Now 95.3 FM, we aren't just telling any story.
We are telling your story.
And your story is all that matters.
Every second and every minute, something new happens. The news breaks.
People at the spot, and angry mob decided to bomb.
Everyone wants to share it, but not everyone wants to dig deep. Now that's where we come in. We bring you the news and go beyond with in-depth conversations and analysis with stakeholders.
I honestly think that the federal government on its own part has broken.
If voters or more people want to be part of that decision-making process, they need to be part
GDP is not a good measure of development anyways. We are not there yet. We need to counter the narrative of the fact that their vote does not count. If their vote does not count.
We bring you the story within the story. And that's what makes us tick. We are Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos, and we go beyond the news.
A very good morning to you. Welcome back into it. It is still now breakfast on your Beyond the News station, Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos. My name is Stephen Imediegu and I am with Nabila Usman. Nabila, how are you doing today?
Well, doing fine. I mean, we're already at 10 o'clock, on our way to 10 o'clock this morning, so the Monday is very much on its way.
Yes, it is. It definitely is. Well, it's time for Community Watch. It's one of our new segments here on Now Breakfast, and what this essentially does is talk about the issues that are affecting you in your part of this great big mega city called Lagos State, and indeed all of Nigeria. Our conversation today on Community Watch is something that we feel will be of interest to you because it affected all of Nigeria, and it appears that there are rumblings of perhaps the same or a little similar to what happened a little while ago. Rumblings, Nabila. But first of all, the phone lines are open, so we would like you to bear that in mind, and we really want to hear it because we're concerned about you in your part of town. 0913 5000 953. That's 0913 500 0953 or 0901 111 1953. 0901 111 1953. Our WhatsApp number is 0809 682 2595. What, pray tell, are we talking about today? Well, there are reports that there is a scarcity of hard cash across Lagos and Nigeria. We got a report this morning, someone complaining that they could not access their cash as well. Apparently their bank told them to come back later as they didn't have cash at the moment. And the CBN, as we have pointed out to you this morning, came out to say, look, there's sufficient cash available for all business transactions. However, deposit money banks have made large withdrawals on these cashes, on the cash that's available, as well as customers who have made panic withdrawals of the available cash, and as well as an increase in the transaction fees from POS vendors has led people to believe that there is no cash on ground. So, pretty simple. We're trying to find out from you, do you have cash this morning, Nabila?
Now, before you ask me that, there's something I want to do. So every time I hear the issues around cash in the country, what I immediately think about is the ghost of Emefiele policies past. Still very much present, we're still bearing the consequences of these things. And I say it because if you speak to some people, right, they'll still tell you that the hash of a job that we did with the cash withdrawal has made that a number of people, especially in rural areas, are less trusting of the government and the system. And quite frankly, we've not done up to a full year since this policy took place, right?
Right.
So we need to understand that the trust process, the process of getting people to believe that the government will not repeat that same thing again, because many businesses are still suffering from that decision. The economy is also still being hit by that decision. This was a decision, it was essentially a move that was supposed to reverse the other almost harebrained decision to print trillions of dollars, naira, and give the Nigerian federal government, which then helped to fuel inflation to where we are today. So, this expectation, I've seen the CBN repeatedly over the last few months. They've had to keep putting out circulars and statements saying that, look, all naira notes are valid. There's no deadline. There's no this. They have to repeatedly do that because people simply don't trust.
Yeah, it's amazing how breaking the trust of the people you're called to protect has this sort of effect on the entire market. But I would say positive out of all of this is the fact that somehow we seem to have improved our transfer system. The electronic money system seems to have sort of strengthened during this period. You had a lot of new banks that came up with interesting facilities, came up with interesting opportunities for people who would rather make a transfer than actually handle physical cash. And you would find, I would say, I would say 7 out of 10 cases, or 7 out of 10 new banks that came up during the course of this this trying period in Nigeria's recent history, have gotten a reputation as being dependable. There are some transactions. I actually opened one of these accounts, and the moment I'm trying to do a transaction, if I say, oh, it's XYZ Bank, they're like, no worry, you go. You know, I've had people actually let me go. And I think it's for two things, because a lot of these banks are now closely linked into the mobile activities of the person who owns them. So there's a lot more trust in the ability to get the job done. I think it's a positive. I'm not exactly happy that people don't have cash, but I would say it's not all that's lost that, we should bemoan in this case.
So, look, our question to you, have you been facing challenges with withdrawing money once you go to the banks or the ATMs or POS operators, whatever the case may be? Talk to us. Perhaps you know someone who has had those challenges, or you know someone who's gone to the bank and decided to withdraw like all their life savings and they've decided they're not keeping it with the bank. Whatever the case may be, dial us up, right? Let's have a conversation. 0913 5000 953 and 0901 1111 953 on WhatsApp 0809 68222595.
You know, it's interesting you bring up withdrawing your life savings and not wanting the bank to hold on to it anymore.
You find out your life savings is 20k.
My sister, it doesn't matter. Even if it is 5,000 naira, there's one bank who will never hold my life savings. There's another who is coming close to that sort of reaction from me because they decided to not credit an account I transferred money to, not revert the money to my account. I spent the entire weekend barking at them on social media and then, sliding into DMs, calling on the phone to say, hey, where is my money? Why am I not seeing it returned? Why am I not seeing it in the account that I credited it to? Eventually, they did, how did they put it? They gave me a temporary reversal. So the money is there. I can see it. I haven't tried to access it, but it's there. So the point I'm making at the end of the day is I feel like the issue of trust, not just from the government, but I would say the policies that affect how the money moves around in Nigeria has left a lot of people feeling disillusioned, feeling as though the best thing to do is hold your cards, not on the table, but just tight them to your chest, if I can use that expression. And that's probably why we're seeing this many complaints about unavailability of cash, banks saying, oh, we don't have cash at the moment. To borrow an expression, there is money on ground, as the CBN has said. There is money on ground.
This thing that happened with the CBN reminds me of when I first started taking economics in SS1. I had a teacher then, Mr. Tunde was my econs teacher. He was a bit of a, he had small trouble, put it that way. And I remember this man would be teaching you about economics, demand and supply, the law, return on investment, blah, 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 all of those things. Then he'd tell you that, look, the banks, this is how they work, but don't put your money in the bank because you can't trust them.
That's a teacher I take a class with every year.
He used to say that all the time. And I imagine that if we had chosen to stick by that statement, then, when the former CBN governor decided to roll out that policy, you'd have been fine and dandy because you'd have had all your money with you, cash at hand.
Right.
But that's where the redesign then came into effect, because withdrawing the cash from circulation was not enough. Redesigning and putting an expiry date on our regular Naira notes, that's where I remember when I saw the redesigned notes, I simply thought that maybe we didn't have enough money to sustain the production of our Naira notes from before, because each of them had a color. They were essentially on the same color scheme as the other ones we were changing, except that they look faded out. They look like somebody put
dye over the money.
No, not dye. What's it called?
Bleach?
First of all, you try to bleach it out,
right?
And then once upon a time when secondary school students would wash their white shirts with blue.
Oh, I did that.
See. Tell me that the new Naira notes don't look that way.
I don't know why you had to go there. Because
they look like we ran out of printing ink.
Right. It looked like that. It looked. I had all sorts of comments. I most of which included what on earth was anybody thinking to choose this particular color scheme, because I felt, especially the 500 Naira notes, I felt that was such a beautiful note. Put that side by side with the redesigned Naira notes, and you're asking yourself, what am I holding? You know, so yes, I agree with you. There was a certain level of, and I will say this, I realize it's national radio, a certain level of disappointment with the color scheme that was chosen for the redesigned Naira notes. I'm beyond.
I remember
painful.
going to buy Bole, and the woman was supposed to give me 500 Naira change, and she gave me this green Naira note. And I stood there waiting, like, why are you giving me 200 Naira? Where's the remaining 300? Because she moved on like nothing, only for me to look down and realize, oh, actually, it's a 500 Naira.
Right.
Yeah. And that's because, look, the scholars, people who love design will tell you that, for instance, there's a reason why you can read a word, even if there's a word you're used to, like receive. You know, the I and the E, the placement, if they are mixed, there's a reason why you can still read it as received, because your brain is not picking the letters individually.
It's the word.
It identifies the word just by looking at it. So it's the same thing with the Naira notes. You don't need to read the number on those notes. You can easily identify, because there are other things that immediately stand out for your brain, such as color.
Of course. Even the 200 Naira notes is still a bit of a headache. I remember transacting, it was a bus. I was just going somewhere over the weekend, and it was a 100 Naira trip. I gave the conductor the 200 Naira notes. It wasn't the newest, the smoothest. It was dirty. And this gentleman carried on with life as usual. I was about to get off the bus when I said, "Oga, my change now." And he went, "I'll not be 100 Naira." I said, "No, sir. Now 200 I give you." He looked and said, "Oga, sorry, no vex. I no see him." You know, so those sort of situations come up because, like I said, it did feel like a secondary school arts project. And as someone who was in the arts class in secondary school, I know what I'm saying. That's how the Naira notes felt to me. I would have suggested, perhaps I can still suggest it. You know the way the British pound currently looks, not the colors, but the feel.
Some of us have not touched pounds.
Nabila, I will speak like the Gen Z and call cap on that one. But I think that polymer nature should have figured into the design, the redesign policy. Perhaps it should have been not just shiny, but a bit more waterproof, as we tried to do with the 20, the 50, and the 10 Naira notes, which I haven't seen in a good long while. Well,
you need to go up north.
Yes, definitely. But yes, if we're redesigning, how about we go in that direction? Because it feels as though this last, 10, 12 years, we've tried to redesign the Naira notes and we've not settled on a consistent color or texture scheme for what our currency should look like. I'm all for new things. I love change. I love the idea of innovation. I like art, but usually I prefer the art to have, dare I say it, a consistency in its nature, especially when it has to do with money. The part of Nigeria where I'm from, we're a little particular about our money. All of Nigeria is. 0913-5000-953. If you're having trouble withdrawing your cash either from your banks, or if the POS vendor down the road from you has suddenly told you, Oga, 5,000, the charge now 500, let us know. 0901-111-1953. You can also send us a WhatsApp message, 0809-682-2595. We're looking at reports that have been circulating, causing the CBN, the Central Bank of Nigeria, to come out and address them. They are addressing the rumor, the allegation that there is not enough cash available. The CBN has said, we've got cash, it is available, and every Naira note is still valid. You don't have to rush to the bank to deposit your old 200, 500 and 1,000 Naira notes as we were forced to do earlier this year. You can still use them to transact your business. They are valid. The CBN says it's just that people are doing emergency or panic withdrawals, and that's the reason why we don't have as much money as we should have. But I'm a little curious as to exactly how much money you would need to hold on to physically to feel secure.
And that's where the question is really around why people see the need to hold physical cash. I know that we still have a number of businesses. The informal sector is still very largely dependent on people's ability to hold raw cash and go about to do their business.
Right.
I understand that. But there is still just the ease with doing your digital transactions. And look, let me confess my confession. I confessed it to Stephen just last week. The first time I held 150,000 Naira. It was scholarship money. And I'd already paid my school fees, so because it came late, I was in uni. This was my second year, and I was staying off campus. So I decided to use that money to pay my rent. My rent at the time was 90k plus agency fee. It was like 100k or 110,000 naira or so. And I went to the bank to withdraw this money because the man was not receiving it as a transfer.
Okay.
Held it inside my bag, and literally, I stuffed it under my armpit because I thought, oh my God, if I don't hold it like this, people will know I'm holding plenty money. Because I'd never seen cash like that it had also never entered my bank account. I never had up to 100 and something K. So it was a big deal. And I'm thinking now that if digital transfers were more of a common thing, then I wouldn't have had that trouble.
Right.
I remember 15 years ago when there would be tales of robberies, armed robbers would break into a family home and demand money.
Where's
I remember, but I don't know if you heard the stories that families would keep stacks of Naira notes, maybe a 10,000 Naira somewhere, just so that if they are robbed, they can say, here's money, take and go.
Right.
As opposed to now where, they blindfold you, carry you to an ATM, tell you you're empty.
Well, yes, I did see, there were actually incidents like that around my part of Lagos. And it's unfortunate where we find ourselves really with all of this. The most amount of cash I've been able to hold physically, and I can't remember exactly. Oh yes, it was school fees. It was about 300,000 naira. I had to actually take it from the bank and pay it into a different bank that was accepting school fees. But it was just surprising, really, that I didn't enjoy holding that much money. Till today, you will never, it doesn't matter what you point at me, you will never find me with more. The maximum I will carry is 3,000 naira. I found it unnecessary to move about with anything more than that because it's... I would tell you the truth, the temptation to spend it is higher. I can resist 3,000 naira, but anything above that, out of sight is best for me.
Speaking of Naira notes and redesigns and whatnot, what's your favorite Naira note so far?
Redesigned or normal?
Whichever one.
I would say the most beautiful Naira note to me is the 500 naira, not the redesign, not the green one. I wanted to call it the original.
One you were using last year.
Yes, last year's 500 naira notes before the redesign in its crisp new form is beautiful.
The one that does it for me, the Naira note that is nostalgic to me is the 20 Naira note before 2007, before we changed to polymer.
I still have those.
I don't have any longer. I mean, I can't remember the last time I saw it because, of course, it's not been a valid currency. Just the width, the fact that it was fatter, right? The quality of the paper, the green on it, and the way that it looked whenever the note would get older. So the way the white looked, because the green never really lost its color, as compared to the white that would start to get brown in a few places because of exchanging hands. That particular note is very nostalgic to me.
I've got a few of them.
I'm coming to your house. I'm coming to Breaking.
I believe. Good luck. I believe I can still find the 30 kobo coins somewhere. I gather currency. It's a habit. You don't want to know the other currencies that I have that are tied to Nigeria, but I have them for historic purposes. So yes, a bit of nostalgia there. I don't know. I don't think Lagos is having cash flow problems today. So perhaps
Lagos is a lot more digital than most of the places in. So, for instance, back home in Kaduna, if you move about, you know how here in Lagos you move about, more than half the stores have POS devices. The ones that don't have can tell you very easily you can transfer. In Kaduna, it's not the same thing. There is a handful of stores that have the POS devices, and most of them would still not really tell you, okay, transfer. It would still be a matter of paying cash. Of course, it's still a slow process, but there are businesses coming on board with the digital means as opposed to your regular hard cash.
I think that's something that we probably have to fight for next year. And to anybody who is listening and feels like you're looking for a business idea, you can invest in it, feel free to go in that direction, ensuring that people can actually do businesses, especially communities outside of Lagos where people depend on hard cash a lot. Is probably the best way to break into an already saturated market. Target the small man, the man who needs to have that 50,000 naira in his hand. Point out to him the advantages of going a different way with his money and his business, and you just might be able to revolutionize the market. Because the story that we're talking about, that the CBN has repeated, advising people to calm down, there's a cash available, it wouldn't be a conversation.
Baby, calm down.
This your money they put in my heart for a long time. It wouldn't be a conversation if we had a lot more digital opportunities for the man who depends on that physical cash to do his business. So it's right there, and I think that Nigeria is too big a country. We've got too many smart people to continually be held hostage, by situations where people panic and pull all the money out of circulation and stack it in their bedrooms, which, by the way, invites the rats for an expensive meal, if you take my meaning. Well, Ambila, that is all for Community Watch. I'm going to be on the streets in another 10-15 minutes to find out if the POSs around our studio here are experiencing or have changed their standard operating procedures. I will attempt to withdraw monies which I know the regular charges for, and let me hear what goes on.
Investigative journalism at its finest.
Dr. Paul, are you listening? David Chiedu is here. David Chiedu, you are a correspondent who most recently came from the streets. David Chiedu, are you experiencing cash flow issues?
For the record, I wasn't on the streets.
Out here in these streets.
let's just be clear. I don't know who Stephen saw on the street.
Man them on the streets.
I don't know what he's talking about, but I'm coming from the other room where there was a meeting happening.
Okay. Off his mic. It's okay.
The midday show is up next.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, Nabila and I are out. You will not hear from us again until tomorrow when we come back at 5:30 a.m. on Now Breakfast. For now, hang out with David because he's got you covered. We've got the news coming your way at 10 a.m. and on the other side of it, you guessed it, your take. Good morning, Lagos.
We are intentional about the stories we tell and the language we use in telling them.
Intentional about the people we speak to and why we speak to them.
Because here at Radio Now 95.3 FM, we aren't just telling any story.
We are telling your story.
And your story is all that matters.
The more we talk about it, the less we fight about it.
This is not a natural disaster. This is a lack of planning. The money that these people have been borrowing over the years that have indebted this country so much, where are those money that they borrowed gone into?
This Lagos flooding has shown that Lagos is not working for people in Lagos.
Join the conversation. Dial 0913 5000 953.
Stay tuned to your Beyond the News station daily for our up-to-the-minute compact news bulletins from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., 4 p.m. and 6 p.m., bringing you a wide range of local and international news from our news desk. Stay informed, stay updated on Radio Now 95.3 FM.
Across Nigeria, Africa and the world, this is Radio Now News.
A very good morning to you. You're listening to Radio